Not gonna lie, ladies and gentlemen, a witty intro has escaped me this week. I probably should have written down the idea that I had last night, but I was too lazy. I didn't do that. I had a friend's wedding, to be fair, so other matters were preoccupying me. But nonetheless, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to your favorite NFL podcast that has been, gracing your presence for the last more than 116 weeks, considering the time we take off. Well, let's say 140, 150 weeks, give or take. Welcome back to the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast as we continue our deep dive into the divisional breakdowns of this wonderful league that we call the NFL, of the sport that we all love and sometimes are annoyed by in certain ways, mainly with the video games that get made for them, because goddamn, those video games are coding nightmares. Football. We're here for more NFL talk, and as always, I myself, Iceman Jurg, and joined by my two compatriots of chaos here on the SAOC podcast. First up on the top of the screen with me, the residence game master. He's become the domestic travel man of mystery so far this summer, because I think he's been in more states this summer than I've been in my entire life for the most part. Justin, our games master, is here. Justin, how we doing?
Tired. But I'm happy to be back.
Short, simple, to the point.
It's been a little while, so.
Yes, sir. First show of August. I promise it won't be our last. Then again, there's not too much of August to do, so it might only be one of like 2 or 3. So no worries there. Justin, always good to have you. Always love the shirts that you bring out. I don't think I've seen this one before, actually.
Thanks.
I love it.
I got this at a music festival when I ran out of shirts.
Nice. And at the bottom of the screen, he is the walking wounded, ladies and gentlemen. Out 4 to 6 weeks with turf toe. That's what you get when this man is preparing to eventually chase his little one around, because his daughter is going to be running around soon, and I can only imagine what that'll cause for his life when she can start moving on 2 legs. The Podfather himself, Rick, how we doing?
Tired as well. I feel like Justin's point about the shirt is a veiled shot at my rant podium from a few months ago when I said the concert shirts are the number one thing on that podium that week.
I've worn a concert shirt, I think, every day since then. Music
festivals are different from concerts. I'll give them that. And tie-dye is a different category of shirts altogether, so that's acceptable. That's very acceptable behavior here. I'm at 4 to 6 weeks with turf toe, but I'm still golfing in about 3 hours. So let's have it hurt even more. Why not?
When the father-in-law needs a tea time partner, it doesn't matter what injury you got. You got to go.
I'm there.
Rick could have one of his arms in a sling. He'd be going.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'll swing one arm like Donkey Kong. We'll do that.
There we go. So, ladies and gentlemen, as you can tell by the title, we've missed a bit of time. So to make up for that, we have a grande episode here for all of you. We have a double divisional breakdown in this one. We started with the AFC last time. We went over the AFC South. Now it is time for us to go over the AFC East and the AFC North, 2 divisions that have a ton of talented teams. And as we kind of broke down at the end of last episode, Rick, there's some really talented teams that are going to miss the postseason in the AFC here. And I think we're going to be going over some really talented teams that might end up getting the short end of the stick because of just how chock full of just competition the AFC is as we go into the 2024 season.
Yeah, I'm eager to get into these divisions, because I feel like there's going to be some surprises in our standings and our overall discussions, and I think there'll be some teams that'll be very, very disappointed with how certain people on this podcast will rank them, as you'll see very soon.
And I think, honestly, these have been the 2 divisions that, just in terms of a differentiation of where we place them, I think these 2 divisions are going to see the most amount of difference. It wouldn't surprise me if there's a chance in the AFC East we each might have a different winner. There's a legitimate shot at that. We each might have a different winner. And in the AFC North, I think we're probably going to see at least 2 different winners between the 3 of us. So
yeah, I mean, you might even see 3. You never know.
You never know when the Podfather and co are involved. But before we get to that, ladies and gentlemen, the main course of the episode, let's begin with the appetizers, so to speak, as a good friend of mine always likes to allude to. So, Podfather, I didn't say it, so no 25-cent payment on this one. He doesn't get his 1 quid per mention. But the Podfather is going to start us off, ladies and gentlemen, because as always, he has a mind-blowing fact. He's full of them, ladies and gentlemen. Let's see what we got on the docket for this week.
So, a few weeks ago, I talked about how Dave Winfield was the first pro athlete drafted by 4 different teams on 4 different leagues in the same year, basically. I wanted to go back to the MLB draft for another little anomaly here, and that comes for us from the Kansas City Royals in 1979. Now, going into that season, Kansas City they were becoming the class of the American League at the time. They finished 92-70 the year prior, and they went to the AL Championship Series, losing to the New York Yankees, obviously. In the 1979 draft, they had the 21st overall pick in the first round and drafted a youngster by the name of Atlee Hammaker. And he's not really important to this story because the point I'm trying to make is there are two guys that were drafted after him, the Royals took in the same draft, that made their name in some other field. And you'll know who these guys are when we get to them. By the way, Atlee Hammaker was the 1983 All-Star, not for the Royals who drafted him, but for the San Francisco Giants. And I think his most well-known contribution, aside from giving up a home run to Jose Oquendo in 1987 NLCS, a guy who had one home run prior, is plunking David Cone with a pitch, because, that's fun. In the fourth round of that draft, however, as you're wont to do in college baseball, you either draft in college or go draft in high school. The Royals had the 99th overall pick, and they went to the high school ranks. They decided to draft a player who was a very talented high school baseball player out of Central Catholic High School in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, with the fourth round pick, the 99th overall pick. But he spurned them because he decided that he wanted to go and play his other great sport, which was the sport of football. And in doing so, he would later go on to have a 4-year career where in his 4 years, he would throw for 8,597 yards, 79 touchdowns, and really, cement himself as a key player for years down the line, because after his senior season, he was drafted 27th overall in the first round. Gentlemen, that player was Dan Marino. So, yeah, Marino was taken in the fourth round of the Royals draft, and he spurned them to go play college football with Pitt, and then went on to a very lucrative Hall of Fame career with the Miami Dolphins. But what if I told you that he wasn't the only player the Royals drafted in 1979 that spurned them for football? Because there's another. Later on in that same draft, we go down to the 18th round. Yes, this was a time back when there were 45 or 50 rounds in the draft. In the 18th round, with the 463rd overall pick, the Royals took another high school player, this time out of Grenada Hills High School in Grenada, California, who ironically was a very good baseball player there, but also was a prolific high school football player there. So much so that he was named to the Parade Magazine All-America High School Football Team, along with Dan Marino and Eric Dickerson. But much like Marino, he spurned the Royals and decided to enroll in college, going to play at Stanford University, where he ended up throwing for 77 touchdowns and 9,349 yards. Now, he was drafted in the same draft as Marino, was drafted a little higher than him, but there was some controversy to his drafting by the team that picked him. Baltimore Colts' John Elway was the man who was also picked by the Royals in 1979, spurned them, and then went on to a great career with the Denver Broncos, because remember, he did not want to play for the Colts. So it's interesting to me that, you have these guys who you're seeing now. You see Kyler and Russell Wilson, these guys who were two-threat players who were drafted well out of high school in baseball, and yet they spurn them to go on and have prolific college football careers and all of that. So, I think that's just really quite cool. There was another player that I wanted to bring up because I thought it would be funny. But he's not really important to the story. Later on in the same draft, they drafted a guy named Twitty, but not Conway Twitty. Jeff Twitty was his name actually instead. So, little south of the mouth for you. But the Royals missed out on two great quarterback prospects because they wanted to draft them out of high school instead of, letting them go to college and figure out their life. And okay, we're not going to pick them. They're going to football guys instead. So interesting.
So what you're telling me is that the Royals are better at picking NFL Hall of Fame quarterbacks than Hall of Fame baseball players, essentially.
In 1979, yes, they were. They were much better at doing that, yes.
Oh, wow. That is spectacular, to say the least. See, this is the kind of stuff that, it'll take you a while to Google, but then you got to ask yourself, why am I Googling this? So why bother Googling it when the Podfather is here to satisfy your random, blind-blowing fact of the week needs, ladies and gentlemen? Once again, a round of applause for the man himself. That was fantastic.
Theodore Roosevelt had a quote once about the man in the arena. I prefer to call myself the man in the rabbit hole because I just lead you down there to these random facts. So, that's basically what I am.
Man in the Rabbit Hole is a fantastic way. That should be that. Honestly, we could make that like a subtitle of the segment. Man in the Rabbit Hole.
Yeah, there we go.
I love
I like
that. Fantastic. So, Rick, once again, amazing as always with your research. And we're not done because, as we know, someone else here does his research and gets us to use the old think meets to really think about answers to questions, ladies and gentlemen, and to solve riddles. And so I don't know if actually would this technically be considered a riddle? I mean, he is giving us clues, so it kind of sort of is. But whatever we want to call it, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for another edition of Audience Join In. Name that player. Echo. So, ladies and gents, time for another shot of Name That Player. I gave my own Fugazi store brand Name That Player last time with Rick, and it was it was a good one to say the very least. But now the originator of it for the show is back. Justin, what do you got for us this week?
Just before you do, Justin, did you see that one last week with or the last time we aired with Jurg?
No, I haven't had a chance to watch the episode.
It's Visante Shenko. That's a good one.
Which ironically continued your theme of guys born in England.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess I'm gonna have to change my player now.
There you go.
No, this player was not born in England. They're actually born in Cincinnati, Ohio, where he grew up being recruited by one Boston College, where he was twice the player of the year for them and had his number retired. I'm sorry, he was 3 times he was the all ACC first team and had his jersey number retired.
Okay, there are 2 names that come into my head initially.
So wait, just to reset it.
Cincinnati, Ohio, Boston College, 3-time All ACC
first team.
Yeah. So there are 2 names that immediately come to my mind because I feel like we're playing quarterback club here.
Right.
I feel like my question is the one that I don't know about much of his college career, other than the one highlight everyone knows about, is Doug Flutie.
Mm-hmm.
The one that I do know a little bit more about is Matt Ryan.
Right.
So, but
it's funny. Matt Ryan was the first name that popped into my head when it came to Boston College.
Or either of them Ohioans.
That's the thing for me.
That's what's stumping me too. I'm not quite sure if either of them were Ohioans.
So what we could always do, Rick.
Yeah, I think that's a good spot to play though.
We each give that our quarterback guess, and if it's neither of them, then it's either a lost to the sands of time guy, or it's not a quarterback.
Probably.
So it could be that.
So you had Matt Ryan, so you'll enter that one in, and then I'll enter in Doug Flutie.
All right, guys, let's move on to the second clue then.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I feel like it's been a bit since we got to the second clue.
Playing his entire career in the NFC South.
Okay.
This first round draft pick
was
taken inside the top 10.
Wait a minute. No, that's right. He didn't do that. Okay.
NFC South.
NFC
Played
South.
poker in the NFC South.
Inside the top 10.
Top 10 pick.
Ooh.
Was there one more hint? Was there one more thing in there, or was it just those 2?
I played his entire career in the NFC South.
South and top 10 pick. Okay. Entire career in the NFC South.
Oof.
I'm just racking my brain around guys who played in the NFC South for basically their whole careers.
Yeah. I'm trying to. Ooh.
I can't think of a quarterback that comes to mind.
It probably isn't a quarterback then, because I mean,
Can't be.
No, it has to be somebody else. NFC South thing trips me up a little bit.
Because some of the guys that immediately come to mind for me,
yep,
I then start to think like, oh, did they play somewhere else at like the tail end of their career when they were let go? I feel like that's the case with a lot of guys. They were let go from their team after a while, and they just played somewhere for a year before they retired.
Except for one. Except for one that I'm remembering now.
Offense or defense?
Defense.
Okay.
I forgot that he went to BC.
Hmm.
This is a good poll. If this is the answer, this is a good poll. And this is a good one by you, Justin. Luke Kuechly.
Five-time defense. Five-time. I forget the stats already. Five-time first-team All-Pro Defensive Player of the Year, Rookie Defensive Player of the Year, three-time Butkus Award winner, Luke August Kuechly.
There we go.
Was drafted 9th overall by the Carolina Panthers in 2012. Finished out his career there. Finally eligible for the Hall of Fame this year. We expect him to get in, if not this year, sometime soon.
Yep.
Luke Kuechly is the answer.
So that leads to my interesting question then. Patrick Willis was a first ballot Hall of Famer. Kuechly has to be.
He
right?
has to be.
Well, their stats are almost identical.
Yeah. We multiple times. This is one of the running strings in the show's history. Multiple times we have gone through the careers of Patrick Willis and Luke Kuechly and put them up against one another because the similarities between the two is just like right there. The lone line of demarcation is just the fact that Kuechly ended up getting a Defensive Player of the Year award.
Yeah.
And if we're being honest, we could look through Willis's career and some of the voting, and we could probably say he should have gotten one. It's fair to say he probably could have and should have gotten one in his career. Definitely. So it's one of those things where like it would be a massive question to the NFL Hall of Fame as to how one guy gets in first ballot and not the other. And it has nothing to do with questioning the guy that got in. It would be questioning how did this guy not get in as well.
So I have a BS argument for why he wouldn't get in first ballot. Well, we were at the Julius Peppers, last year, so therefore we can't have two Carolina Panthers back to back.
No, I think it's also there's a number of guys that are eligible this year.
Yeah,
depends on who you go up against too. There's only so many people that you can go in one class. It's the same reason that Patrick Willis never won the Defensive Player of the Year award, because when he had all these great seasons, he was going up against monster seasons from other guys, and it's not that he didn't deserve it. It's just that some other guy also deserved it. You know what I mean?
I still think, to me, when you're as dominant as Kuechly was in that span of time, it's sorry, so-and-so. You're just going to have to wait another year.
Span of time as Patrick Willis. There's only like a year or two difference in their careers.
Basically. I mean, it's tough. I'm looking at like the first year guys that are gonna be eligible this year. Obviously, you have Eli and Kuechly. You then have Marshawn Lynch, Terrell Suggs, Joe Staley is a potential first balloter. Darren Sproles is up there. The late Demaryius Thomas. Here's an interesting question though. This is one I saw as well. Luke Kuechly or Clay Matthews? Yeah.
Kuechly to me by a stretch. It's two different things. Clay was one of those guys that they ended up using him a lot more with rushing the passer, and Kuechly was more that drop back in the zone, but he was damn good at that.
Yeah.
He was damn good at that.
Mm-hmm. And then also Kuechly's teammate Ryan Khalil is also eligible this year, the center.
Of all the names you've listed of just the first timers, because obviously there's the return guys, and there's some guys that we went through this past year, right? That it'll be telling to see which of them get on the ballot for this year. The only person, and I'm not saying I would necessarily make him a first ballot Hall of Famer. That's a debate to have later on, one episode in the future. Eli's the only guy on that list that I would say is a definitive lock in compared to Kuechly, only because I know the voters are going to vote him in. It's one of those things where it doesn't matter our opinion on it. I don't see the voters not voting in Eli.
Yeah.
No other name that you said aside from Eli to me should go in above Luke Kuechly for the first timers. They just shouldn't. It's not that they didn't have good careers, but they weren't Defensive Rookie of the Year and Defensive Player of the Year basically back-to-back years. Like Justin said, five-time first-team All-Pro?
Yeah.
Made the Pro Bowl almost
Pro Bowler.
Made the Pro Bowl almost every single year of his career, and that one season he didn't, I think, was literally only because of injuries. And
keep in mind, too, this is also going to be a class that's going to include all those guys who didn't make the cut, like Antonio Gates and, Torrey Holt and Will Fork, James Harrison, London Fletcher, Darren Woodson, Reggie Wayne, Jared Allen. We're going to have fun. We'll
also remember, and I hate to bring this up, and again, I'm not saying it's because he wouldn't deserve to be in the a first ballot, because I think he should, but likability has something to do with it. And I think a lot of people of the voters are going to be more likely to vote in Luke Kuechly than some of the guys who got snubbed this past year. I think that's just a fact.
Possible.
And it's not, and that's not a detriment to Kuechly's case at all. we just understand, like, let's be real. Let's not sugarcoat it. We know that the NFL Hall of Fame, for as prestigious as they want to make it, as it always is, it's the hardest Hall of Fame to get to. It's not the hardest Hall of Fame to get to necessarily because of the accolades. It's the hardest one to get to because you don't know on a year-by-year basis what they'll take into account in terms of voting
Is it
for.
the hardest? I would assume baseball is the hardest.
People, no.
They don't even vote people in.
A lot of people have always said it's the baseball one is relatively a joke. So in the relatively serious ones,
I mean, you're not wrong.
In the serious ones that actually vote people in, because you can't have classes of 2 or less people, be a real sport for once. And I say this as a hockey fan, act like a real sport, why don't you?
I was gonna say, it is also the hardest one to get to geographically, because where the hell is Canton, Ohio?
Who wants to go to Canton, Ohio?
Right.
Unless you're an
Cooperstown's
NFL
at least like a little resort town-ish, but Canton, Ohio, I was like, ugh.
Well, they especially, like, I think the NFL, again, this is props to the NFL, maybe the NBA is second, they make it like a spectacle. They make it a made-for-TV kind of deal when it comes to the Hall of Fame ceremony. Whereas the NHL doesn't care, which they never do. Baseball, it's somewhere in Ohio. And basketball is I know.
It's in New York, dude.
Just said it. Huh?
But no, Cooperstown's in New York.
No, I'm not talking about baseball. I'm talking about... never mind. I crossed my Hall of Fames. Irregardless, basketball is the next one where it's like they make it for the spectacle of it.
Yep.
And it's just... No, it's just the Basketball Hall of Fame. We all know it's kind of whatever.
I will say this too, and I know we're going to move on, but I will say this too. Do better, Canton, because your top 2 attractions are the Pro Football Hall of Fame and the Tomb of William McKinley. Do better, Canton. Like you're either going to the Football Hall of Fame or to see a president who's dead. Like, come on now.
I love the fact that those are the only 2 attractions.
Oh yeah, his house and his grave. There you go.
His house and his grave. Yep. So as we continue to critique states, cities, countries, and all alike here on the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast, we move on. First off, fantastic name of that player, Justin. We move on to the meat and potatoes of the show. There,
I got to pause you for a second.
Huh?
What did we say after the AFC South won? The very first thing that we had to do going into this this episode. We need Justin's predictions on the AFC South.
That is true, actually. That is correct.
Yeah.
So, Justin, very quickly, give us your 4-1 for the AFC South. Just for a reminder for the people, for myself, I had the Titans in 4th, the Colts in 3rd, the Jags in 2nd, and the Texans in 1st. So that was my AFC South run through. Rick's, yours were?
Titans were 2-15 and in 4th. Jaguars were 9-8 and in 3rd. Colts were 10-7 and in 2nd, and the Texans were 13-4 and winning the division. Justin, are the Titans first in your division? Is that what happened?
Imagine.
No. I think that the Titans might end up being the number 1 overall pick, not because of that they're devoid of talent completely, but I just don't understand the way they're building their roster, and maybe that's me, but I have them at 4th. I'm a little torn because I really don't want to put the Colts in 3rd. I really like some of the moves they made this year. But just in terms of schedule, I mean, they're going to really have to show up some teams that are on par with them. They got to make examples of teams like the Bears and the Steelers. And, I mean, they should beat a team like Minnesota. But then they have to show up to those big games like, Houston. And, I mean, it's outside the conference, but Detroit, they have to show up and prove that they can play with those teams. And until they do that, I'm not really willing to pick them higher than 3rd in this division. Here's where it gets a little muddy because obviously everyone is on that Houston Texans bandwagon, and I think they deserve it. I mean, they had a really, really good run last year. They are a really good team. They made some serious improvements, and they're really going for it this year. But they got a tough schedule. I'm not going to lie. I mean, they should, in theory, open up 3-0. But Jacksonville's not a gimme. Buffalo is still a decent team. They still play the Green Bay Packers. They got to get Indy again. They play the Jets. They play Detroit. They play Dallas. They play Jacksonville again. They play Miami. They play Kansas City. You know what I mean? They have tough teams that they are also going to have to prove, hey, we belong here. And for that reason, I'm putting Houston in second, and I'm going to go with Jacksonville to come back. I think Trevor Lawrence is going to be healthy again. They've made some interesting additions to that depth chart. I think they lost a little bit at receiver, but I like Brian Thomas. They still have Evan Ingram. Gabe Davis is going to have to prove that he could be a consistent every down threat instead of just a deep threat, but they have a great run game. They have really, really good defensive pieces. I just think that Jacksonville is the proven team there, and a one-year stint, albeit it was a great run, especially with a rookie quarterback. CJ Stroud proved me wrong. I still can't believe that I bought into all that smoke during his draft because I was a CJ Stroud guy, and then I fell off because of all that, and I got fooled. But
well, never forget, our podcast still picked him first overall for the mock. So
that's true. But that being said, I still think that they are the number one wildcard team probably, but number 2 in their division.
I think that's our first dissension in terms of a division champion actually this year, which is actually pretty good. But yeah, because I think we all had the Falcons. I think the Cowboys,
all had the Lions
and the Niners.
Yeah,
so this is our first the Cowboys, not the Eagles.
I mean, you've been riding that Eagles bandwagon for a while, but I think you fell off a bit as well.
Yeah,
you're right. I did.
Yeah.
Although, to be fair, Justin, you and me defended the Eagles way more compared to Rick, because Rick has been borderline missing the postseason. So,
borderline? No, they are missing the postseason. Yeah. What are you talking about?
I will say I have been. This is the second year in a row that I picked a repeat winner in the NFC East, because last year I said the Eagles were going to repeat. This year I said the Cowboys were going to repeat.
So maybe you're the kryptonite in this whole thing.
So the trend,
I got the first 2 right.
The Giants and the Commanders are winning this year. Yay!
So the trend line goes that whoever Justin picks to repeat the NFC East doesn't get it.
Oh boy.
So there's that. All right. So that being said, let's forget the NFC East. Let's move to the AFC East, and let's start with the team that tormented these 2 gentlemen for decades, for 20 plus years between the 2 of them. One of them one less year than the other, relatively speaking, even though they weren't that threatening last year. But we begin, ladies and gentlemen, the AFC East and the AFC North today. We start with the AFC East, and we start with the team that used to run this division with an iron fist, no velvet glove. And let's just say things are not sunshine, lollipops, and roses in New England anymore. Definitely not, to say the least. Bill Belichick is gone. Tom Brady is long gone. Robert Kraft, he's there. But that's about it from what was the original, basically, big 3 of letting the 2 of them do whatever they wanted to do, and the 2 of them were so excellent that they could figure it out. It's just not the case anymore. Relatively actual general manager, a new head coach, and a roster where you just have to ask the question to some of these guys, who are you? Look, this team right now, Jacoby Brissett is listed as QB1, which answered one of the questions for us going into the season of when Drake May would get the start. Would he be one of the guys to go early, as his other compatriots in the top 3 likely will be? But, well, actually will be in both our cases. But will not be the case. Drake May is going to sit for however long it is decided that he needs to. Again, always interested in a case like this to see if it's going to be a Carson Palmer situation or Jordan Love situation where the guy sits. Well, Jordan Love sat 3 years. I'm not talking about that for Drake May, but at least 1 year. Or will he get in 4 games in, 6 games in, etc., etc. But Jacoby Brissett is going to be the veteran. They're going to let him steer the ship at the start of the season as they try to stabilize things in New England, because this is basically a stabilizing time, and I think it's going to extend past 2024. This is a kind of weird team that is trying to, it's no longer trying to get past just the Brady aspect of it. It's trying to get past what Belichick was trying to do to this team for the years that he still had control of this roster. This is a wide receiving core where you just have a couple young guys in there mixed in with a handful of veterans, and it's just who can show that they'll be on this squad past the 2024 season, right? Tight end situation. You have 2 older guys in Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper. Maybe some young guys behind them, but it's really the 2 of them are are the top 2 tight ends, both of them mainly receiving options. An offensive line that has a veteran in David Andrews, but then has other young guys across it. Unfortunately for us, and friend of the show, Cole Strange, is injured to start the season. He's on the PUP list, so that's just a blow to them. And then defensively, it's a very similar thing. Now, we do know this defense is going to be, less than to an extent, because Matt Judon got traded from the squad just days ago. He was sent to the Atlanta Falcons. So now they don't have the guy that, let's be real, is going to most likely be their top pass rusher again. It has been the top pass rusher and most persistent threat in New England for the last couple of years. Justin, I'll throw this one to you first. This is not your high school or college years Patriots team. I would say this isn't your dad's Patriots team, but both you and your dad went through like all the torture together. So, so this is not the Patriots team of yesteryear. This is a new era of Patriots team. What is going to happen to New England for 2024?
Look, I think that they are undoubtedly the number 4 team in this division. It is what it is. I mean, as much as it gives me joy to say it, that's not why I'm saying it. I think that there are pieces there. There's definitely an interesting development in terms of their secondary. It's got a lot of young, strong players, I think. Christian Gonzalez should come back healthy this year. He was a real bright spot for them during the season last year. Jabril Peppers has been good for them. I didn't really understand the Judon trade, but I guess if you, as a rookie head coach, you want to get rid of the distractions. He didn't want to be there. They can now either sign him to a long-term contract in Atlanta, or he can hit free agency after that.
Or maybe he demands a trade in 2-3 weeks from Atlanta.
Yeah, well, we can get started on that scumbag later. But, there's young, good pieces there that I think will help develop. Jacoby Brissett is obviously going to start, but Drake May's there. He's going to eventually get that starting role. And then you have decent veterans that can, teach these guys and string these guys along. I mean, they have good running game pieces in Ramondre Stevenson and Antonio Gibson. They have Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper to kind of help the line who's kind of young, and maybe help some of the receivers with some tips and tricks and things like that. There's going to be bright spots to this team, but it's going to be few and far between. So I expect them to have a rough start. I expect them to probably be out of it fairly early, but the question is, can Drake May play? Because that's what it's going to come down to in the future.
Yeah, ultimately, that's the key question. This is a team that just drafted a young kid with a top 3 pick, and you got to see something in there, right? Yeah, you have to see if there's something with this kid before you make decisions on the franchise moving forward. And there's going to be a lot of decisions to be made about this franchise moving forward. Just 2 quick pieces of context for everyone as we continue this, and I throw it over to Rick. First off, ladies and gentlemen, the way we do the divisional breakdowns, we go from 4-1 from how the division finished last year for our analysis. So that's why we are starting with the Patriots. Don't worry, the good teams are coming here soon. And also, as we've been doing with the other divisions, just for context of who they are facing schedule-wise, for the most part, aside from their 6 games against their divisional opponents, the AFC East is taking on the AFC South, and they are taking on the NFC West. So some very tough games, to say the very least. And it's not good to have tough games on your schedule when you're a struggling team. Rick, the Patriots, 2024. Like Justin said, there are some pieces like spattered around here and there, but it's tough when you have 22 starters and to only have a couple guys here and there. It's probably going to be a painful 2024 for New England, will it not?
I took a look at the early ESPN bet lines for our week 1 because we're thinking about the pick challenge at some point in the future. And week 1, the Patriots have the biggest line against them so far. They are 9-point underdogs against the Bengals. Because do you want to be the team that faces Joe Burrow in his comeback in game 1 in Cincinnati, no less? Welcome to the league, Drake May. I know you're not starting week 1, but get a good look. Yeah, I mean, listen, this is, I think, for football purists and those that despise the Patriots and Bill Belichick and Tom Brady and all that they've done, this is the year of karma coming back to taking out the Patriots because their schedule is brutal, as you guys have been mentioning. The fact of the matter is that in their first 4 games, they have 1 home game, and against the Seahawks, who have a very good defense. Maybe going up against Brissett, maybe against Drake May early on. Who knows? Maybe even Joe Milton, for all we know. He's playing very well in camp too. He could be a starter in case someone gets hurt. But it's just there is a lot of youth on this team. There is, and again, there are guys that are trying to prove themselves. Like KJ Osborne is trying to prove that he's a legitimate threat as a receiver because he was stuck in Minnesota for a while, and then now he's on a new team. He's trying to become that. I don't know who their number 1 is. Is it Jalen Reagor? I hope not, because he's not very good. Is it Ty Thornton? Because he's kind of a drop black hole machine, if you will. So who's their number 1 receiver? I don't really know. Kendrick Bourne, I guess, but again, I don't really know who it is. the ageless wonders of Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper, that'll help with, I guess, getting that running game going. But again, the one thing that I always point out is that when you have an offense that's very one-dimensional, it's not really going to do you any wonders to work with that. And so Alex Van Pelt, I look at him and look, he's had some good, offenses, schemes in his time as the offensive coordinator, but, does that really give you any kind of, semblance of success? And I think the Matt Judon trade is emblematic of Gerard Mayo's quote from training camp, where, if you're fighting in camp, you will play the whole preseason game. If you're not fighting, you won't see any of the field. So maybe Judon was kind of like, well, I'm a veteran. I'm a leader on defense. Why do I need to show this guy who I know has been here for years? Why don't I just show him now that I'm, who I am? So they traded him to the Falcons for a third-round pick, and so that linebacker core took a big hit. You still have McMillan and Bentley and Taki now from the Browns, but you're right. There were a couple of good young pieces all around this team, but that's not going to make up the core of what a good team can be. And I think it's going to be very tough sledding. And I think you're going to see this Patriots team struggle in a lot of games to have any relevancy. And I don't believe this is going to be a good year for them. And I think this could be a historically bad year for the Patriots as well. But for New England, you need to have a bad year before you can, start having good ones again. You can't just go from a legendary Hall of Fame coach that Justin and I despise with all of our hearts to a new head coach and not have any growing pains. There are going to be some, and this year is going to be a mountain of growing pains in New England.
Yep, and it's probably going to even extend past this season. By the way, the ageless wonders of Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper, they're finally turning 30 this season. So there's that. It feels like these guys have been older. Like it feels they're older than what they actually are.
It feels like Austin Hooper's like Benjamin Button. He's just been in the league for 15 years and he's still 30. Like, what is this?
So happy early 30th birthday to those two. Born a month apart, actually. Funny enough. So it'll be the birthday celebrations for the tight ends in New England this year. How many wins will they get with those birthdays? PPD. That should actually be a personal bet between the two of them. Who's gonna? Who will have more team wins by the time it gets to their birthdays in terms of the roster? God, that would be a funny one. Imagine it's just the same amount for both of them, like 2.
Yeah, that's 0 for both of them.
I don't know about 17, but no, it's going to be growing pains in New England. They have to make up for years of tough drafting, years of interesting decisions, some gems here and there. Justin mentioned him, but Christian Gonzalez is going to be a top tier corner in this league for a very long time. A solid enough defensive backfield. Like there's something for Gerard Mayo and co to work with. This definitely feels like any wins that New England gets here. I think it'll be the coaching staff game planning this to a high level. I think we're gonna get a test of this coaching staff early on in its collective career together of how can they game plan situations, and depending on how many close games, close quarters, close halves that we get from New England Patriots games, it'll go a long way in saying, what can this team as a whole do in terms of player development, in terms of in-game adjustments. This is going to be a big test of what this coaching staff is made of, and I'm very interested from that perspective to see how their 2024 season goes. From a player perspective, give and take. So we move on from the Patriots. I don't think there's too much more to say about them, but this team, there's plenty to say about, because of course, this is a podcast that is 2/3 Jets fan, and we're going to have fun talking about this one. The New York Jets entered the 2023 season with Aaron Rodgers, with a lot of hope, with Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson as young offensive skill position players, with an offensive line that had a injury-prone left tackle that they were hoping to make an impact, with a defense that is one of the top in the league that just needs to hope that the offense can carry its weight. And then 2023 happened. And now the Jets enter 2024 with Aaron Rodgers, once again, who has only played 4 more snaps than he did last season. With Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson as young skill position players. With as projected currently as the number 1 left tackle, a injury-prone Tyrone Smith. They're hoping to get something out of him, even though it'd probably be Olu real quick, who in theory should take the starting left tackle spot soon. And a defense that is projected to once again be top in the league. And, we'll see how that goes. There's a lot of mirroring to last season, and really, boys, I think the number one thing everyone is going to point to, just as the immediate reason, right? This is the immediate reason that everyone, the bare basics, the casual fans, the analysts who think they're good on TV when they're really not that good, the number one thing they're going to point to when it comes to the Jets at the start of the season is, does Aaron Rodgers make it past the first drive? And what does this offense look like with Aaron Rodgers? That is going to be the number one thing that everyone is going to point to, because a lot of people are going to have confidence in the Jets defense. I'm sure both of you are confident in the Jets defense, once again, relatively speaking. A lot of people are going to point to a coaching staff that here and there deserves the credit where credit is due for the situation that they were in last season, and getting some of the performances they did before everything just like collapsed in on itself at the end. Because it was just a tough way the season ended when they could only carry the ship for so long, when they had basically there was no quarterback there, if we're being honest. The number one thing everyone's going to look at is Aaron Rodgers and how the offense goes with him. Rick, I'll throw it to you first as the newly rechristened Jets fan, newly baptized once again. Obviously, it's more than just surface level. It's more. We know that it's more than just Aaron Rodgers when it comes to what the Jets' success will be this season. So start the discussion of that. What is going to dictate the future of the Jets for the 2024 season?
All right, so let me go away from Aaron Rodgers, because we can discuss that, but that would make us know better than anybody else who does these shows like Adam Rank. Let me start off with what has to happen. Breece Hall has to continue to pretend to be a top 5 running back in this league, and I know that that's a high bar from the clear. The young man almost had 1,000 yards rushing in his season back from his injury in his rookie year, but he's the number one guy. He's the top running back on this squad. I know they drafted a couple guys here and there, and they still have Izzy Abanikanda, but this is Breece Hall's backfield, and he's got to be the guy that's there. Similarly, Garrett Wilson has had 2 consecutive years of 1,000 yards receiving. Come hell or high water, doesn't matter who the quarterback is, could be a cardboard cutout of Tim Boyle, doesn't matter, he still had over 1,000 yards last year. He's your unquestioned leader in your wide receiver core. They added Malachi Corley and Mike Williams, and that should help, and their tight end room, with Ruckert and Conklin. Losing CJ Uzama, I guess, but that was a crowded room anyway. So you have Ty Conklin there and Jeremy Ruckert, who they drafted, and also Yeboah, who they have. You have to hope that you hit on Olufashinu, because the last time they drafted a tackle at 11, I believe, was Mekhi Becton, and that didn't hit. So you have to hope that hits. You have to hope that Elijah Vera Tucker is back to health. You have to hope that Morgan Moses and Tyron Smith can stay healthy, and when it's time for them to move, it's because they're moving, not because they're hurt. You got to see something more out of this defensive line. Like, Will McDonald, for everything that he was coming out of the draft, do you see schemes for him in the second year? I'm not quite sure if I do. And that's a bit of a problem there. Their linebacking core, Quincy Williams and Jermaine Johnson are great. CJ Mosley's still there. They're really, really good. And this defensive backfield, we can talk about Sauce Gardner all day. Like, he is the second coming of Revis Island, no question about it. DJ Reed, too. Really solid players. But let's get back to that number 8. That number 8 that's like a target behind the line of scrimmage there. You're right. This all boils down to Aaron Rodgers in a way that's a little different from last year, because last year it seemed like, once Rodgers went down, there wasn't a lot of hope. And this year, depending on your views of Tyrod Taylor or Adrian Martinez right now, maybe Jordan Travis, Justin's boy, who he picked and got the pick correct, maybe he can have something. But, this is a tough year for the Jets because they have all that pressure on them. And it all comes down to Aaron Rodgers. It really does. I think this is the makings of a really big bounce back year for the Jets. It pains me to say it only because I don't like Nathaniel Hackett, and we know this and it's on record. But if he can actually lead a competent offense for once, I think I'll be okay with it. The schedule's not kind, gentlemen, because they start on Monday Night Football at San Francisco, and it's like deja vu all over again, except in California instead of in New York. But from there, it gets a little bit easier for them. I would say that after that, if if they can survive San Francisco, win or lose, the next 4 games are relatively simple for them. Titans, yeah, they have some defensive pieces, but Jamal Adams is old. The Patriots, we talked about them just now. The Broncos, who we'll talk about next time, which is like they're still and then the Vikings in London. I mean, at least it helps that those 4 games you can view them as kind of like walks in the park versus San Francisco. So if they can get past week 1 without any catastrophic injuries and any question marks, I'm going to stamp it right now. This team is the team to beat in the AFC East. If they can do that, they're the team to beat. No question in my mind.
And that's something to say because we'll get to who did win this division the last few years, but this is actually a division I think is a bit more wide open than some would expect. I think it's wide open now more than it's been the last few years. And what you're saying is apropos to it. The Jets are talented. There's no question about it, right? And like you said, it's your number one guys continuing to perform like your number one guys. It's getting support. That running back room, while Breece Hall is nice to have as your number one guy, getting support from that room as a whole. If Davis or Abataconda, if either of them could prove that you could go by committee in a couple of games, I think that would be a massive boon for the Jets. If Mike Williams can just get a semblance of the form that we saw when he was a Charger at his peak, right? That would be a massive support, especially for Garrett Wilson, who, like, this dude, like you said, Rick, back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. He only has 7 total receiving touchdowns in his career. And that is strictly on the quarterback play that he has been forced to deal with over the first 2 seasons of his career. Like, this is a team where there's talented pieces. It needs to fire on all cylinders. And I think, this defense, there's some question marks to have around it. Like, what impact can Javon Kinlaw make, a free agency signing a guy who, former first-round pick, not really accomplished great things in his career so far. Can he maybe get a boon from being next to some of these guys? You mentioned a Will McDonald, and what is he going to do? Can you get another step up from Jermaine Johnson this season? He had 7.5 sacks last year, which is not bad. Can you get more from Quinnen Williams? We know just his presence alone helps, but you would like to see more than just the 5.5 sacks. But of course, he has to do everything on that defensive line, so you can forgive less sacks because you're assuming he's pulling guys, he's getting double teams here and there, he's helping stuff the run. Like, it's performance at a lot of areas. It's performance. It's stability. It's continuity. That's kind of what, honestly, for a long time, the Jets have been missing, and they've been unlucky. Because I look at that linebacking core with C.J. Mosley, who finally, after, he was snake bitten the first couple seasons he got there in New York. He's actually been healthy, right? We got to give him credit. He's been healthy the last 2 years, but just the pieces around him, and the pieces on the other side. So this Jets team, it's just like it's different reason after different reason for the last couple of years. Justin, throw it to you, impassioned Jets fan, Justin. But even that aside, your thoughts on even Rick's statement. Can the Jets truly be the team to beat in this division if things can finally go well for them for the first time in God knows how long?
Well, that's the question. I mean, can Woody Johnson find that, blind gypsy that he met down the road in some random who cursed him so that the Jets could never have a quarterback ever in the history of Jets? I mean, even the best quarterback of all time that they had, Joe Namath, brought him to the promised land. He's got a losing record. Their best ever quarterback season, arguably, is Ryan Fitzpatrick. And listen, we love a little Fitzmagic here, but if Woody could carry Aaron Rodgers to the mountaintop and bathe him in that thing like he did in Holes to break the curse, that's all we really need right now is we need a quarterback. This is a very, very good, complete team. The offensive line is probably the only weak shot that I would say, but they did a lot of work on it this offseason. I do believe in Olu Fashanu. I think that was the right pick. I was all about a lineman, for years and years now. And since the Becton pick, I really do believe that this team can do something if they have some quarterback play, but it's a quarterback-driven league. And now we have a 40-year-old quarterback who hasn't played, a full season in a little while. And, he's coming off back-to-back injury seasons, one obviously way worse than the other, but can he stay healthy? Can he be the Aaron Rodgers that we saw 3 years ago, because it's really been about 3 years now since we've seen that Aaron Rodgers on the field when he won his back-to-back MVP seasons. Can he be anything? If he could be, listen, even if that in that last injured Packers season, if he could be the 24 touchdown, 4,000 yard guy that we saw there, and what do you have, 10 interceptions? That's a playoff team for the Jets. That's a team that's more than a playoff team. That's a team that you don't want to play, because that defense and that run game are nasty. And I got news for you. One of the things the Jets have missed for a really long time is a goal line presence. I really like this kid out of Wisconsin, Braylon Allen. I think that he's going to make a major difference in a 2 running back set on the goal line with, Garrett Wilson on the corner. You have Mike Williams that can go up and get it now. You can have the heavy package where you have these guys blocking. Conklin is known as a good blocking tight end as well as a good pass catching tight end. And you don't know which way they're going. And now you have a guy that can bruise, a guy that could be finesse, a guy that can catch the ball out of the backfield, 2 guys that can catch the ball out of the backfield. The goal line presence for the Jets has always been dismal in my entire life. I've never seen them good. Actually, that's not true. Since Thomas Jones and Leon Washington, the Jets goal line presence has been rough. This is something that I think could change this year. And this is something that, if they change it, could seriously impact the fate of the Jets. But again, it's all going to come down to a 40-year-old Achilles with a little plate in it. And let's hope that thing is sturdier than it looks.
Yeah, and that's just been the number one thing for the Jets the last 2 years, offense, right? Like this defense has played at a all-pro level as a group, as a unit. Like we did the math before last season, the last 6 games in 2022. If the Jets had Aaron Rodgers' 2022 stat line and you put it there, they're a playoff team. Yep. Like
that's always the issue with the Jets. The Jets is they're a playoff team,
but if
there's always that if.
Yeah.
And it's hard culturally to turn that corner. But when you bring in a Hall of Fame quarterback or a future Hall of Fame quarterback, that's hopefully the move that you need to make to turn things around. But we'll see.
It's one of those things where at some point the ifs and the buts need to go away, and it just needs to be allowed to happen. Like it can't be us imagining anymore. Like Aaron Rodgers is technically going into year 2 as a Jet, but we have to actually imagine what the offense looks like with him. Like that is just next level. And as someone who, for the most part, takes pride and a sick amount of enjoyment here and there when it comes to New York sports teams suffering as a whole, like the Jets are not one of those teams that I have found joy in the suffering, because it's like there have been moments where just this feels so sad, and it's one of those things where you guys, like from a perspective of an outsider, like give them a chance. Like injury gods, football gods, give them a chance to actually see what this offense could look like.
If
I feel like that's what it is.
A single person who claims that they're a Jets fan and were surprised that Aaron Rodgers went down 4 plays into the game last year, you're not really a Jets fan.
Or they were too much.
Did not experience what it's like to be a real Jets fan, because that was the most Jets thing that has ever occurred in my life. Almost as Jetsian as trading for a player who agrees to play with you and then decides before training camp that he wants to be traded again because he needs a new contract and didn't show up to any of the practices and hasn't proven that he deserves a new contract, even though you did offer him a new contract and he declined you.
I mean, I was wondering when we were going to get to the discussion on him.
Yeah, that was going to be the last point.
I hoped it wouldn't happen personally, because why are we talking about a guy who's not playing? You know, why does it even matter?
Because he's a good player, and he should be a good player, and he should be like, all you had to do was show up. They said, we'll negotiate with you when you get here. They said, obviously all reports, I don't know, I'm not in the room. They said, hey, we'd like to give you a raise. Would you accept this? And he said, no, I want more. They said, that's fine. We'll negotiate with you, but we want you on our team. We're going to trade for you. He said, yeah, that's cool. I'll show up. They said, perfect. When you show up, you prove to us that you're the player that you have proven to the rest of the league every time. We're going to pay you like that. He's a top 5 guy in sacks in the last 4 seasons. He deserves to be paid that way. Just all you have to do is show up. Nah, I'm going to go to Japan, dude. I'm not going to show up to training camp. Are you kidding? Trade
So,
me.
Hassan Reddick, ladies and gentlemen, for the context. It is certainly an interesting situation to say the very least.
Scumbag, dude.
I will say, I want to give props to the Jets for holding firm that they're not going to trade him. Like, I think they'll get something done.
If
It's
I'm
just
the
a matter
Jets,
of when.
that dude is going to die as a Jet.
And honestly, him holding out, like, I heard somewhere where even if he thinks he can hold out for as long as he wants to, like, if it reaches a certain point, the Jets still have his contract rights for going into 2025.
He would die as a Jet.
Yeah, they will keep him forever.
I wouldn't even accept retirement papers. Nope.
Death certificate only.
Nope. You're a Jet. Sue me.
I mean, you know,
you have a contract.
Like the benefits of having him on the team are one thing, but it's not like without him the linebacking core is atrocious.
They don't want him as a linebacker. He's a pass rusher.
Oh, that's what I'm saying.
They need someone to get after the quarterback, which is something that they've been missing. They were decent last year, but if they had a guy like him getting after the quarterback on that line, they have maybe the best defense in the league.
And what he opens up for the likes of, like I mentioned before, Jermaine Johnson and Quinnen Williams, and what he can do for those two.
It was a fantastic trade at the time, ignoring, I guess, what is his personality. But outside of that, like, I mean, the dude's a monster on the field.
Yeah, he's been ever since he got out of Arizona. Like, he has been
what's going on in his head.
I don't
like they said they weren't going to pay him.
I don't think he knows what's going on in his head anyways either.
Clearly. And that agent needs to be fired.
Well, yeah.
That's the advice you're giving your guy?
Yeah. Go to Japan, sit out.
Sit out, agree to go somewhere based on the fact that they said they'll negotiate with you when you show up. Then don't show up and then demand a trade.
And we can only imagine like what negotiating has happened behind the scenes with the agent.
Out of your mind?
There's two schools of thought with that. There's a school of thought that also says, well, Aaron Rodgers went to Egypt, so it's like.
But Aaron Rodgers, again, has his contract.
Yep.
And is in training camp.
Yeah.
He didn't miss any training camp.
He wasn't there for the mandatory OTAs, which, I mean, the word mandatory is taking on a whole new definition in the Oxford Dictionary nowadays.
He missed the mandatory training activity.
Yeah. It was probably like, capture the flag or something like that. I don't know what happens there.
Which you probably would have gotten injured from trying to do. So realistically, it's probably
basically he didn't get to introduce himself to the rookies. That's what it was.
Yeah.
He missed the icebreakers. That's the most fun part of camp.
Like all the June and July stuff that they always do. Like this is just like this is more rookie second year. From a Reddick and Rodgers perspective, like those two guys don't need to be doing this crap. Like they need to be resting their bodies. Reddick, though, like my main critique is like it's been saying, it's the negotiating tactics, or I almost want to say lack thereof, when it comes to the agent.
It's one of the worst moves I've ever seen from an agent and or a player. I mean, looks wise, it looks terrible. You look like a spoiled asshole, and results wise, he's lost over $1 million already.
Yeah.
In fines.
Yep.
You have a contract.
Yep.
You are required to be there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like it makes absolutely zero sense in every angle.
Yep.
And again, you just look like a scumbag and an asshole, and you look like a word I'm not going to say, but it's the opposite of being a man.
Yeah.
Because you made an agreement.
It's and it's just and this is coming from a guy like in myself who you two have known me for a long time. I've been on a number of podcasts. I'm very much pro player most of the time, but this is not one of those cases you could be pro player. Like this is a case where the player you cannot in any way, shape, or form justify and say the Jets are acting bad faith in any way. All they're asking the dude to do is come to the building, like be a part of training camp, ingratiate into the team, and the negotiations will continue. That's all you have to do.
He could have probably done a hold in. He could have been like Jamar Chase sitting on the sideline right now.
Yeah.
And it would have made a difference.
It would have been better because at least he's there. Yeah.
You're all right. I'm here. I'm learning the team. I'm part of the team. I'm not going to risk injury while we're negotiating a contract.
So
I'm a new player.
I'd almost be fine as the GM. Be like,
respectable.
Sure. Yeah, I'd almost be like, sure, yeah.
Don't walking around with a kimono and an umbrella in a fucking different country. Like, come on, dude. I'm all for anime life and that culture, and that's super cool. Like, I get it. Like, I be where you're supposed to be.
All right, so then
Hate to play a game, dude.
So then here's the question. Then the question then becomes: if nothing, you say, you keep as a Jet until he doesn't walk the earth anymore. Fine. What if there's a trade option that's out there for him? Like let's break this down. I saw this trade a couple days ago. Justin, what would you think about this? If the Jets send Reddick to the Falcons for Lorenzo Carter and a 4th round pick.
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, obviously, I would if I thought that I was getting better than I was now.
Yeah.
Then I think I would do it. But short of anything that is getting better, like I'm not even like breaking even on this trade. Like he needs to be good. Give me a 1st round pick.
Well, so that's my question then. Like, is the value on a trade for Reddick now decreasing based upon how much time he's missing in camp?
He's got no trade value. Who wants this guy in their camp?
I understand that.
30 years old this season. He's coming off a good year, but he's really statistically not been super consistent.
Yeah.
Again, top 4 in sacks over the last top 5 in sacks over the last 4 seasons. I get it, but he also had 120-something, 2 18-sack seasons. Like he had 2 really, really good ones that skew those numbers. He's not negotiating. He was an issue in Philadelphia when he wanted a contract. It's not the first time he's had this issue. He's holding out now for the team that said, we're willing to negotiate you. We gave up assets to get you. We want to pay you. You deserve to be paid. And he won't show up to camp. Who's giving up assets to deal with a guy like that? And on a team that should be a winning team. So now we have the cap space. We want to pay you. We're a competitor. This is the best situation you could have been traded to in his position.
Yeah.
And this is the reaction that he's giving.
He also has no leverage at all.
Such a bad look. He's got no. Why do you think he was grasping at straws when he made her trade request? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
It's like a child throwing a temper tantrum for not getting what he wants. Even though we told you you can have the lollipop once we get in the car. I'm not getting in the car till I have the lollipop.
Well, you're not getting the lollipop.
Like this is one of
this is a future exchange that Rick will have. And about the lollipop.
And lollipops are overrated. I'm sorry. I'm just putting it out there right now.
What's the dude with the Vikings who signed with the Jets and Harrison Barr?
Think Anthony
Barr signed with the Jets in the talking period and then decided he didn't want to be. I don't even have that much of a problem with that. I was upset at the time, but like he made a mistake. What's his name for in basketball? Did the same thing. DeAndre Jordan.
Oh, I remember that.
And it was a major thing, and it's kind of like a bitch move, but like it is what it is. Like you signed with, dude, I get it. I've made decisions where I've been like, I regret this. I want to go back right now. And I've backed out of deals and things like that. But no one's ever agreed to say, all right, we're going to give you a $10 million raise, probably just show up to camp and like, we'll discuss it. And then I was like, no, like it doesn't make any sense. And it's just, it is a bad look.
That's the part to me because the Jets promised you'll get a raise for 2024. Anything past that, we need to negotiate. They're giving you what you want for this season. Like that's the bad faith part where it's just you can't side with the player here because this organization, they're not lowballing you. They've promised you a pay raise for this season. You just need to negotiate for anything past that. That is more than acceptable circumstances for a team that you've never played for before. You need to connect with the staff. You need to connect with the locker room. Like, you cannot point to this in any way, shape, or form and say that the Jets did something to screw this up. The Jets did everything as far as we know. The Jets held up their end of the bargain with promising a pay raise and saying that anything after that will be negotiated. That's more than fair for a situation like this.
What I think is also key on the Jets side of the leverage aspect is that, you saw Matt Judon got traded to the Falcons. They haven't extended his contract yet. They haven't worked on a deal with him either. So,
and I don't think they're going to.
I don't think they're going to either.
Maybe, and if they do, it'll be one this is the best comparison I heard of to what we could see as the end result of this is just like what happened with Chris Jones last year. And they got a re-up of what his contract was for the remainder of 2023, free agent 2024. If that's essentially what the Jets have promised you, like maybe they could work in a way to give him back some of the money that he lost because of all the fines. They could do that. Like if you're Hassan Reddick, and especially where the Eagles traded trading you to the Jets, a team that has a legitimate shot, as we're going to continue here in the AFC East in a moment. We're going to move on past this to talk about a team that could win their division, that'll be in the postseason. You're going from, look at Hassan Reddick's career. You started in Arizona. They weren't that good. You get one good season in Arizona. You go to Carolina. I don't think they were that good in that season. It was 2021 he was in Carolina. I don't think they made the postseason that year. You go to Philly the last 2 years. Super Bowl your first year there. Super Bowl appearance your first year there. Playoff team year 2. Now, there were things that led to them not being the same caliber team, but still to the postseason. You're a player who the early part of your career was beset with never making the playoffs. You finally now get to a postseason team. You moan and whine your complaint out of Philly, and you get lucky enough to be sent to a team that has the high prospects of going back to the postseason. The Jets have zero incentive. If the Jets do decide to trade this man, they have zero incentive to send him to where he'd want to go. They'll send him to where they feel like it, and he'll like it. And if he doesn't, again, he's going to be in breach of contract again. It's going to be like
where he wants to go. He's not going anywhere.
No, I know. But yeah. I'm saying if the Jets turned the thought, he has no options here. The leverage does not belong to him. The Jets already said they would give you a pay raise. This is all on you right now. You need I don't know if he's left Japan yet. Look, I'm sure the food there, the experience, whatever, must be fun. Get the hell out of Japan. Get your Demon Slayer swords mailed to you that I'm sure you were perusing there, and show up to your job.
Is he still there? Like, did he go to
Japan? I don't know if he is.
I don't know if he's there. That was like a month ago.
I was gonna say, I understand.
I mean, he can spend 2 months in Japan if he wants to.
Yeah, that's true. He has the money.
Yeah. There's a lot of islands I guess you can go to. Yeah, I just
I mean, it would probably take 2 months to properly see all of Japan if we're being honest.
Yeah, but I mean, it doesn't make any sense. He's got no leverage. No. They agreed to come here. I don't know.
All right, moving on to the team that finished second in this division last year. I think the year before that as well. Always the bridesmaid, never the bride.
Yeah.
But always the groomsman, never the groom when it comes to it, ladies and gentlemen.
We'll have winter weddings.
But the Miami Dolphins were second in the division last year. Can they finally overcome it and get first in the AFC East in 2024? Maybe. We'll see. This team, after much deliberation of what they were going to do, they extended Tua in the offseason. They gave him that big contract extension that it was the question of when were they going to give it to him, how much money was it going to be, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They answered that question. Tua is locked in as the long-term quarterback of the future in Miami. Joining him on offense, you have Raheem Mostert, and a guy entering year 2 should be interesting, Devon Achane. You have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle on offense. You have Jonnu Smith is now going to be tight end 1 in that team. And Jonnu Smith, I think, is just another one of these tight ends coming in, kind of a rotating door for McDaniel and co in Miami at this point. But he really is like a tight end they think would fit their system better, right? Doesn't need to be receiving first, more blocking first. And considering he played for Arthur Smith for a couple years recently, he has some experience with that and being a decoy. An offensive line that has some synergy to it, right? It's the same tackles that have been there the last few years. You have Brewer down the middle. Eichenberg is one of your guards. There's a lot of consistency there. I think Robert Hunt was really the main piece they lost on that offensive line. And considering it took $100 million to lure him away, I don't think it was necessarily a mistake to lose that guy. Defensively, it's going to be very interesting to see what they could do defensively after a 1-year experiment. Vic Fangio is no longer there. But they are bringing in a new defensive coordinator, a guy named Anthony Weaver, who has a lot of experience in the NFL. He's been on coaching staffs of the Texans. He's been on coaching staff the last few years with the Baltimore Ravens. Any guy who's an assistant head coach and a key person that John Harbaugh would lean on, I think that's a guy that deserves a little bit of trust and cachet in this league in terms of being a coordinator. You have a veteran there in Calais Campbell. You have when these guys are back, because this is a big thing. I think the big thing, we talked about offensive injuries for the Jets. It's the other way, I think, with the Dolphins when it comes to the defensive side of the ball, because you have Bradley Chubb, who suffered injury last season. You have Jalen Phillips, who suffered injury last season. You have a defensive secondary that, I mean, I just see a bunch of QQQs on the depth chart on ESPN right now because a lot of these guys are questionable. But if they could put it together, this offensive coaching staff that has shown they can do good things, especially in the first 3 quarters of the season. The goal in Miami, I think, is simple. They want the number 1 seed because they want the AFC to run through South Florida because that is their best chance to have postseason success. Justin, I'll throw it to you first after our impassioned talk of the Jets. We could probably bring it down a notch or two when it comes to the Dolphins. Justin, this Dolphins team, it's almost similar to the Jets, right? Extremely talented. A couple of ifs over the last season or two for them, in different compared to the Jets, but still somewhat similar. But the Dolphins have a lot of questions to answer for themselves, especially when it comes to December and January football. What about this team do you think going into 2024 gives them the best chance they've had in a very long time to answer some of those questions?
A healthy defense. I really think that's what it comes down to. Look, they have a lot of big names on that defense, few of them past their prime, but there's good players on this defense, and there's depth on this defense. They need to stay healthy. They need to do what they do best, because I think it was a bit overshadowed with the way Tyreek has been playing and Tua has been playing and Devon Achane and Raheem Mostert and Jalen Waddle, like all these great, exciting offensive pieces. Mike McDaniels is an offensive coach. They've been an offensive juggernaut. This defense has been very good. And when Jalen Phillips went down last year, it killed them, because he was not only the first injury that they had, but he was having a fantastic year getting after the quarterback. And it was just devastating for them. Like I said, they had a lot of injuries. Jalen Ramsey missed a lot of time. They had a lot of issues. Now they have basically that defense back. Javon Holland hopefully is healthy. They have Jordan Poyer. They have Marcus May now as a backup, which is good. They have Emmanuel Ogbah, which is, a big name from the past that, I don't know what he's done recently, but he was a major player in that Ravens Super Bowl. They drafted Chop Robinson. There's pieces along that defense that really need to perform this year. And if they can have a good defense, because there's not really question marks on offense. The question mark on offense is, can Tua stay healthy? He's been healthy the last year. He wasn't super healthy the year before. He's had some pretty good years so far. He's efficient. He can hit to Tyreek Hill, which is always nice to see, if you're a Tyreek Hill fan at least. Can the defense keep pace with this offense? Because realistically, this could be a Super Bowl team. They have the horses to run with any offense in the league. It's, can they keep the other offenses down? Can they play defense? Can they make plays to keep their offense in the game? And it remains to be seen. Like I said, a lot of the big names are there, but can this team keep itself relevant on defense?
Yeah, that's going to be the question for a team that it's always the case with these offensive-based coaches, right? Like, we know the offense is going to be good. What can the defense be? And, hey, the offense adding a new weapon. Odell Beckham Jr., anyone? No?
I forgot about that.
No? Whatever. But, no, this offense, I think we could all say that we're probably going to see a lot of the same stuff, right? And especially if Mostert and Achane can be that duo in the backfield that McDaniel wants them to be. Like, this is going to be a potentially balanced offense that can pop off. Consistency, I think, will be the biggest part for them. Just like they had the big explosion games last year, especially that performance against the Broncos, right? Like, I think they'll settle probably for more regular games comparatively rather than just get all the offense in one. But this is a team that offensively there's a high level of consistency there. I think we'll see that. But is the defense, and if they can get past, because I think the first half of the season will be a bit difficult for them, like here and there on a possession by possession basis, just because like some of the guys that are coming back from injury, they're waiting to come back, depending on how late they got hurt in the season last year. But if they can hold firm, and if they get their secondary all the way there, which has the likes of Javon Holland, who I've been a fan of, Kendall Fuller across from Jalen Ramsey, Jordan Poyer, a former Buffalo Bill there. This is a pretty good team, boys. This is a pretty good team. Rick, we'll have you give the final thoughts on the Dolphins before we move on to the last team in this division.
Let's watch and see what happens after Thanksgiving. Because I actually think you have a reverse jerk. I think that the early part of their schedule is fine for them. Like, they have an earlier bye, sure, but their games before the bye, some are difficult, but some are pretty easy. But I look at the gauntlet they have to run from Thanksgiving to the last part of the year. Thanksgiving night, they're in Lambeau against Green Bay. Then they have 2 games against the Jets. One's the very last game of the year at MetLife. Between them, you have a game at the Texans. Then you host the 49ers, and you're at Cleveland on Sunday Night Football. And look, the stigma's there. It is absolutely there that Tua Tagovailoa has to show that he's a better wintertime quarterback than he currently is. And that's what's going to prevent this team from doing much of anything. If they struggle, then they're not going to ascend to the top of the division like some people are predicting that they will. If they succeed in those games, then they'll be better. There's a couple other things that I want to mention with this defense. And Justin, you're right about this defense needs to be healthy. Brand new D coordinator, because Vic Fangio's gone. Anthony Weaver, who was the assistant head coach of the Ravens last year, is their guy now. So does his defensive mindset alter what they're doing, what they think? We'll see. And there's a little bit of intrigue, too, with that Texans game that I'm going to just put out there right now. The Texans offensive coordinator is Bobby Slowick, of course, who should have won assistant head coach of the year last year. The Dolphins' pass game specialist on defense is his younger brother, Ryan Slowick. So you think somebody knows how to stop his brother's offensive schemes? Maybe the guy who watched him growing up. Maybe that's the fun part of it. The defense has a lot of good weapons, a lot of good players. If they're healthy, they're a nightmare. The linebacking core, Jalen Phillips, Ogba, Chop Robinson, Tyndall, Bradley Chubb, obviously, nightmarish. Defensive line, Calais Campbell, yes, but the other ageless wonder. But after him, who was there? Zach Sealer, maybe, I guess. He had a quiet, 10 sacks last year. Like I said, a quiet 10 sacks. You didn't really know that he had them, but he had them. And then, it all depends upon this offense and depends upon Tua and how they can manufacture a strong start. This could be a team that could start off really, really well, and then because of just the minor things that happened, the overcoaching of McDaniel, especially in that Ravens game last year where Chubb went down to the injury that didn't need to happen, the reticence of that mindset creep back in that Tua wasn't a good late season quarterback, and you saw in the last 3 games, the Ravens game was rough, the Bills game for the division was rough, and the Chiefs game, the coldest game ever played, was rough. But Jared, you've also pointed out too, the Cowboys game the week before where they won by a field goal, he didn't really play up to his par. Yes, did he throw for 4,700 yards? Yes, absolutely. But again, that's a nice statistic, but what do you have to show for it in the end? This is an interesting point too that I want to mention. The Dolphins have not won a playoff game in 23 years, which is the longest active drought in the NFL. So you've got a team who hasn't made the playoffs in 12 or 13 years, which is the longest active drought for that. And in the same division, a team who hasn't won a playoff game in 23 years. So this is a year where something's got to give.
Yep.
Maybe they both do, but something I think has to give on this side. So Dolphins are dangerous, but there's that stigma that's there, and until proven otherwise, that's going to be hard to shake. So this is the thing: prove it otherwise, Tua. That's the big thing. I, as you know, in our quarterback rankings, I had them extraordinarily low for your standards. But more people come around to that now because, look at the back end of their schedule and tell me where you have an easy game after Thanksgiving. You don't. Maybe the Browns, because maybe at that point they'll be a bad team, but they're still a hard defense to play, especially at home on a Sunday night in Cleveland in December.
Yep.
So we'll see.
The Jets have something to prove in terms of getting back to the postseason. The Dolphins have something to prove in playing good past Thanksgiving and winning in the postseason, finally. The Buffalo Bills, man, oh man, they have something to prove, don't they? I feel like every single year, and I say this is the third time we're doing this, but every single year of this, we've talked about, can the Buffalo Bills finally get over the hump and win and make it to the AFC title game, win the AFC title game, and defeat their demons? That is not the first question to ask about the Buffalo Bills going into the season. Because I think the question to ask about the Buffalo Bills will be if they make the postseason. Because this is not the same Buffalo Bills team that has had their run of the AFC East over the last couple of years. It was starting to look bad last year. There were chinks in the armor, to say the very least. Josh Allen was being a next all-world turnover machine for this team. Receivers just couldn't get open, and no one was having consistent games. It doesn't matter if it was Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis, or their third, fourth, and fifth stringers. There was no consistency. The running back, they were trying to come along. James Cook had a good rookie season ultimately, but it took a bit, right? It took a bit to get into the flow. They had to fire their offensive coordinator. Their offense, defense, guys were hurt, guys coming back, et cetera, et cetera. Things that every team has to deal with. And they make a run late in the season, and they make it back to the playoffs. They win a wild card game. And they lose in the divisional round. The Buffalo Bills. Oh, they did win the division last year. We should say that. They did defeat the Dolphins, of course, as you mentioned, that game that was for the AFC East. The Buffalo Bills lost Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis in the offseason. They lost Mitch Morse along the offensive line. A solid, step-in version for that of Connor McGovern is going to be center. Not bad. He's a solid offensive lineman. But they lost a guy who'd been there for a number of years, playing at a good caliber. He is now in Jacksonville, if memory serves correct. Dalton Kincaid looks to be the new tight end one, as Dawson Knox is essentially really no longer the guy anymore there. A lot of young guys are going to have to take a step early here. This is going to be year 2 for James Cook. What kind of running back is he going to be? Is he going to be a potential bell cow, 20, 25, maybe teetering on 30 touches a game? Is it going to be a running back by system? Can they hope that Ray Davis or Ty Johnson or someone else in that backfield can give some support in games here and there? How much support is that going to be for Josh Allen in his physical running style? As we know, he's still going to run the ball no matter how much we think he should probably dial it back there. He's going to get 7, 8, 9, 10 runs a game, whether that's by design, whether that's by the receivers can't get open. It depends. And then the wide receivers, man, Khalil Shakir, this is going to be the highest workload he's going to get, right? Keon Coleman, Curtis Samuel, MVS. A lot of questions about this team offensively, right? Defensively, is there another level to unlock for Greg Rousseau? Is there another level to unlock for AJ Epinesa? This linebacking core has a lot put on them because what just happened in the days preceding us doing this, Matt Milano again. I feel so bad for this guy because he's one of the most talented guys in the league, but he gets injured again. And I don't think it's season ending, but it's majority of the season. Like you were talking about Thanksgiving, Rick. I think it's a similar thing. I think we're not going to see Matt Milano until December.
Yeah.
I think is what I saw in news and updates.
Yeah.
And this is not the same defensive backfield that this team had in years prior, right? Even compared to last season, it was a little bit different. But, the defensive backfield that this team had for so many years of Tre'Davious White, of Jordan Poyer, it's not there anymore. It's Taylor Rapp, who's a fine safety, right? It's Christian Benford, as of now, is the projected corner, aside from Rasul Douglas, who is mainly for the most part been that support guy. He's never been a number one corner. He's normally been across from various guys in his career, like a Jair Alexander, right?
Yep.
Can they get something out of Kyer Elam? I'm only saying this name because he's the current projected starting free safety right now on this depth chart. DeMar Hamlin is projected to be the starting free safety on this team after they didn't want to play him at all last year.
Yep.
I am not, and shout out to Tyler Bass and Sam Martin, one of the best kicking punting duos in the league. But it's going to take more than a kicking punting duo to help this team. I think the Buffalo Bills, I was starting to call this last year. I think 2024 is going to be a rough and rude awakening for the Buffalo Bills. And we were talking about windows for teams. I think 2024 is going to be a stark reminder of how quickly windows can close for squads. I'm not high going into 2024 on the Buffalo Bills. Rick, I'll throw it to you first.
There's nothing really else more to say about it, I think. Because it's not just Matt Milano being out with a torn bicep. Von Miller is past his prime. He's done. Honestly, he's done. I mean, can he have a bounce back season? Yes, but it's rough.
Played really well last year before he got hurt.
Well, but again, now you're relying on
more 2 years ago, Justin, because last year he had 0 sacks for the first time in his career.
Yeah,
well, he missed. You're right. It was 2 years ago, but he missed the whole beginning of the season last year.
Right. Well, he played 12 games and he only had 3 tackles last year. So I mean,
he played in 12 games.
Yeah. He was not anywhere. Terrell Bernard had a much better season last year. That was a guy who 143 tackles in his second season. So for them, but it's not just Poyer and White. Mitch Morse is also gone. Their starting center. Stephon Diggs gone. Even Ryan Bates, their backup center, is gone. He was traded to the Bears before the draft. So they drafted a center to go along with McGovern, but will Cedric Van Pran Granger do anything? I don't think so. You're right, though. This season's going to be that stark reminder that windows, not only do they close, but sometimes they get slammed shut on your fingers. And when that happens, it's really painful. And that's going to happen to the Buffalo Bills because, can this team win games? Yeah, they're still better than a lot of the teams that are on their schedule. But the problem is that when you're the number one team and you've got those divisions, you're playing those top returning teams. So they're playing the Lions, they're playing the Niners, the Chiefs, the Texans, the Ravens. They're playing teams that have gotten better, while the Bills have kind of stayed the course or gotten worse in some areas. Like, I'm sorry, but Curtis Samuel and Marcus Valdes-Scantling and those guys, they're good receivers, but they're not making up to Stephon Diggs' production. They're just not.
Or impact and presence.
Or impact, which is going to lead to Josh Allen doing more things himself. And when Josh Allen does things himself, it's boom or bust. He'll either run for a touchdown or he'll take a hard hit and fumble the ball and lose a possession in Buffalo territory, and that's more points against your defense. And I'm sorry, but it's just not there for them this year. I think this is going to be a tough year. I don't think this Buffalo Bills team makes the postseason, and they go from first to third because, let's be real here, no one's worse than the Patriots. Like, I'm not calling for that level of a disaster, but there are some holes here. There are going to be games where they force. There are going to be games that they lose because they shouldn't, and it's just going to be rough. And I think that this is, like you said, a stark wake-up call to Buffalo, that all that goodwill and all that good times that you had, the music has stopped. And when the music stops for Buffalo, guess what you still have? 0 Super Bowl titles.
4 straight AFC East division crowns the last 4 years. And I know there's definitely going to be any Bills fans that watch this are like, what are you guys talking about, this, that, and the third? But it's sudden, man. Drop-offs aren't always gradual. It's not a year-by-year thing where it's you got 13 wins, then you got 12 wins, then you got 11, then 9, then maybe back up to 10. No, it can be like that at the drop of a dime. And that's really what could be the case here.
The only thing that'll save him is that they signed Gable Steves to a free agent contract.
Well, let's see if he can make up the Leonard Floyd production, because that's another guy that I feel we need to point out before I throw it here to Justin. Leonard Floyd was on this team last year. 10.5 sacks gone.
Yep.
That sack production gone on a team that now, again, Von Miller. I feel like this is going to be the year that really decides what kind of player he is now for the rest of his career. Is he just a rotational pass rusher? Can he get that kind of magic again just one last time for himself? We'll see. He is a 2-time Super Bowl champion, right? Like, I do want to give him a little bit of leeway in terms of what can we see out of him at the start of 2024. But this is a team that has a lot of questions. Because I asked the question, again, this is a talented team still. There's talent on this team. But is there that next gear to some of these guys? I think that's a question that we're going to see answered very early on here. And for some of these guys, there's no margin for error. There's no room for error. But, again, Keon Coleman, I understand he's a young kid and he's a rookie, man. We've talked about some of the veterans. He's going to have to shoulder a heavy load early in the season, I think. They're going to rely on him a lot. And I think this is going to be a season where Sean McDermott gets the microscope put on him. You fired Ken Dorsey last year. You fired your offensive coordinator. And you started to, kind of turn it around last year, but you weren't gangbusters last year. You weren't necessarily firing as one of the best offenses consistently. You were just better. You were just throwing less interceptions. And now that microscope is going to come back to him. You can't fire the offensive coordinator again to just solve all your problems. It's going to take a lot more than just that. This is a team that has a lot of questions on it, man. And it's going to be interesting to see how this season plays out. Justin, you will finish off your last take on this last AFC East team, and we will quickly give our standings for the AFC East before we move on to the North.
I'm not as down on the Bills as you guys are. Realistically, I mean, they're not going to be as good as they were last year. And I don't think that they're probably going to be as relevant. This is more of a rebuilding phase, but they still have Josh Allen. They still have a really young core. They do have some decent young receivers. They drafted Keon Coleman, who I loved coming out of Florida State. They still have that really young, good defensive line. I mean, Von Miller is listed as their backup defensive end. I mean, as good as he was in the past, he was when he had that great start with Buffalo 2 years ago, he was a rotational player. He was a rotational player last year. He's what is he, 34? Now, he's not what he was in Denver. It's just that's not the way it works. You know what I mean? So, look, there's pieces there. Obviously, that secondary is going to need a ton of help. We thought they needed help last year with all those big name players, and now those guys are gone. They're going youth. They made a couple of signings. They're going to see what's there. This is a rebuilding year for the Bills, and as good as they've been, they're probably at a rebuilding year are going to have 9 wins. Like I'm not surprised that if they're going to have a winning record. You look at their schedule and you tell me that they are 10-7 this year, I could see it. I'm not shocked. Even if Josh Allen has to do things himself, it results in a lot of turnovers, sure, but it results in scores. It results in wins. Things happen when this kid it takes the field. So I'm not going to sit here and say that the door is slammed shut. As long as Josh Allen is their quarterback, all it takes is a couple of right moves in free agency and in the draft to turn around that franchise. And look, even if you have a bad team, having a good quarterback makes you relevant. And Josh Allen is there for another few years. He is the top 5 quarterback in this league, whether you like it or not. I happen to hate it. He's playing the Jets twice a year, but they're a good team, man. They're going to be a good team. They have holes. There are good teams that have had holes. That Bengals secondary was garbage when they went to the Super Bowl. And sure, it ended up getting them torched in the Super Bowl, but they got torched in the Super Bowl. I'm not saying that's the Bills' ceiling this year, but I can't imagine them having a top 10 pick. Not without trading for one.
I mean, you can miss the playoffs but not be a top 10 pick. That's
fair.
Very much possible.
It's fair.
And to me, like, it's just I hate. I'm not putting the blame on him because obviously get the contract, but I hate the idea of having a rebuilding year in the midst of paying my quarterback $250 million.
Absolutely.
It's not a situation you want to find.
This is a rebuilding year where they are expected to have a winning record. This is not like a rebuilding year where they're expecting to have the number 1 overall pick and draft a new quarterback. They have some of the major pieces in place. And yeah, you don't want to waste a year like this where you have Josh Allen for another year in his prime. You're paying him a ton of money, which is affecting your cap and hamstrings you to do anything else. But he's still there, and he's still going to be there next year. You got to keep him healthy. You got to keep him strong. You got to keep him confident. There's young, good pieces there. Like I said, I think Curtis Samuel had a really good year last year. People underestimate how good he was and how clutch he was in Washington. He had a really good year. When they needed plays, he was the guy. Not Terry McLaurin, not Jahan Dotson. Curtis Samuel was the guy. And he's not going to be the number 1 there. It's probably going to be either Khalil Shakir or Keon Coleman. I happen to think it's probably going to be Keon Coleman. They still have Dalton Kincaid. I expect him to catch a lot of balls this year. I don't expect him to have the down year that he did last year because they don't look at their tight ends. But sure, there's going to be issues, of course. This is not going to be the same Bills team as it was the last 4 years.
Yeah, this is just my question because you mentioned potentially 10 wins, maybe at worst 9, which 9-8, you're still above 500. 10-7, you're above 500. Is that enough for a playoff spot this year in a hyper-competitive AFC? I think the question remains to be seen. All right, we complete the AFC East portion of this episode, and we will be moving on to the AFC North here. But before that, let's go through our. It's on this end. Let's go through our 4 through 1 really quick, fellas. I think just for the sense of time, I think I could speak for all 4 of or all 3 of us. All 4 of us on number. No, all 3 of us on number 4. We all have the Patriots as our 4th seed, correct?
115-1.
Yeah.
Yep.
There we go.
Let's get weird.
The number 1 overall pick. So I'm very confident in thinking that all 3 of us have them at number 4. It's the 3rd seed that makes it interesting. Justin, who is your 3rd seed for this 2024 season?
Me first? Oh, man.
I mean, do you want me to go first instead?
No, it's okay. I am going to pick. I'm a little torn because I know who my number 2 seed is. But that's how close I think the top of this division is. I think the Jets have the best defense. I think Miami has the best offense. And Buffalo is probably the best quarterback. So it's really, really tough to decide who's going to do what. And honestly, these teams don't have the same difficulty in schedule that they did last year. I mean, the Jets are traveling everywhere back-to-back weeks. But I think, like I said, purely because of strength of schedule, still with a winning record, probably a wild card team, I'm going to probably have to go with the Bills as my number 3 seed.
I, too, have the Bills as my number 3 seed. But will that lead them to a wild card berth? Find out in a couple weeks' time when we do our full 1 through 7 for the AFC and the NFC. Rick, your number 3, and then you could just give us your number 1 seed, which will in tow give us your number 2.
Buffalo ain't a wild card team this year, boys. I'm sorry. 8 and 9, I have it. I have it being a really bad year for them. Number 1 seed for me. I'm going to ride this bandwagon again now that I'm back and fully christened. New York Jets 13-4. I think they have what it takes to be a really solid team. And honestly, the Dolphins status quo 11-6. They are a wild card team, but they do not have a better record than they did last year. They have the same record because I think that they're going to start off really hot, and then until proven otherwise, they're going to fall hard after Thanksgiving. So I have them 11-6, but the Jets win this division 13-4 for me.
I will go next. I have the Dolphins winning this division, and I have the Jets being number 2 in the division. I think it's split by hairs. I could see a scenario where not out of dominance, but out of tie-breaking luck, the Dolphins could have the division sealed by the end of the regular season in that final game against the Jets, to where it's more about is there a shot that they might have the number 1 seed? And if they don't, I could see them resting some of their guys against the Jets if the division is in tow because of whatever tiebreakers, right? Like I could see the Dolphins having like a very slight tiebreak edge over the Jets to give them that little bit of leniency at the end. But I have the Dolphins capturing the AFC East crown for the 2024 season. Justin, your 1 and then subsequent 2 as we get set to move on.
Look, I'm struggling a little bit with bias at the moment because the Jets' schedule, I mean, I know they have to travel a lot, but it looks like there's a chunk of it where it just seems like they should win so many game after game after. Like, I also had them at 13 wins, and when I did it the first time, and I'm like, that can't be right. I have to be biased. I don't think they're going to win 13 games. They're the Jets. They never win 13 games. So I have Miami winning again, like Jerg, by a hair. I think that their records are going to be extremely similar. Like if Buffalo has 9 or 10 wins, I could see, the Jets having 10 and Miami having 11 or vice versa. I could see a smattering of different results from these top 3 teams. It is such an interesting race, the way they match up. It's like a rock, paper, scissors thing. But I just think Miami is more of a given on offense, and it's too much of an offensive league. The defense is important, don't get me wrong, but their Jets defense, even if they're the best defense in the league, I don't think they're that much better than Miami on defense if Miami is healthy. So, I mean, I really think they can get after the quarterback. They have pieces that can turn the ball over. They're decent in the linebacking core. Like, there's reason to be optimistic in Miami at the moment. So, we'll see.
Indeed. So that being said, that wraps up the AFC East. We have more in this one. We're going to speed up a little bit. The AFC North is who we're going to talk about now. The second to last division for us to go through in both the AFC and this entire NFL landscape. Boys, we are already at the second to last division, the penultimate one. Who would have thought? The AFC North, the second to last division that was eliminated in the AFC is why we're going after them, because the leading team won last year. Won the number 1 seed in the AFC before they lost in the AFC Championship game. That was the Baltimore Ravens. And we're going to go over this division. So, as per, we go from 4 to 1. And in this division, the 4th seed last year won 9 games. That's pretty good. The only division in the AFC last year where every single team was above 500. And I think even if you include the NFC, I think this was the only division in the NFL that every single team was above 500. I'm forgetting off the top of my head, but I don't think that was the case with any NFC division last year, if I'm not mistaken. So this is a division that was competitive last year, man. And even the teams that had really bad injury luck got a lot of wins and threatened for a wild card and even threatened the division until basically the last month for some of them. So this is a division where these teams, it doesn't matter what happens to an extent, they can fight back. But can that happen 2 years in a row? Let's get down to the conversations. The first team we're going to talk about, the team that finished 9-8 because they were missing their quarterback for the majority of the season, Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals. It might as well be the Cincinnati Joe Burrows. But no, the Cincinnati Bengals and co. It was tough 2 years ago, the surprise run they had. or actually, no, is that more than 2 years ago at this point? 3 years ago, excuse me. The surprise run they had, making it to the Super Bowl, AFC Championship game 2 seasons ago, taken out with injuries last year, but this is a team that is bringing back a lot of talent to the squad. We know Joe Burrow is the commander of the ship, with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins as his top two lieutenants, you could say. You have Zach Moss there now being the guy in the running back room, saving a little bit of monny there. Zach Moss had some flashes in Indy last year, right? When the whole Jonathan Taylor contract issues were coming, we're dealing with, is what the Colts were dealing with. And even as Taylor was ingratiating himself back in, Zach Moss was really the guy there, right? Like for a stretch before Jonathan Taylor took it back. I think Zach Moss as the definitive number one running back is going to be something big for this Cincy team, and a running back room. I think it'll go by committee here and there, but I think Zach Moss is the definitive number one guy. Like I said, Chase and Higgins, you'll see what production you can get out of guys who had a little bit of production last year. Burton, Trenton Irwin, Andre Isovis? However you say his last name. I feel like there's like a letter that's silent somewhere in that last name. I just don't know which one it would be.
The I is a Y. It's Yosivash.
Yosivash. So Yosivash, I love that, by the way. Andre Yosivash, like what he could potentially do if I've heard some good things from him coming out of Cincy camp. I think maybe they might expect him to have the chance at being the third guy there, here and there. But we know who the top two are. Mike Gesicki is there to be that receiving threat at tight end. And then it's an offensive line who it's Orlando Brown Jr. as the left tackle, veterans in Ted Karras, Alex Kappa, Trent Brown. It's a solid offensive line. It's not world beating, but it's relatively solid. There's some continuity from last year, which I think is probably the biggest win for the Bengals going into this season. And then it's a defense that, like, God, isn't this just a team that tries hard, eh? Like this is a team where scheming and communication and coordination and all that is what leads them to their success whenever they get it on defense. Trey Hendrickson is the top guy there in terms of pass rush production. They're going to hope that they can, A, get more from him this year, and B, make him happy because he has not been a happy camper in training camp as well. You have a linebacking core that returns Jermaine Pratt, Logan Wilson, a defensive backfield that has Geno Stone, a former Baltimore Raven there, a young Cam Taylor-Britt, DJ Turner II, a veteran Mike Hilton. Dax, like this is just a team that it's spattering around of some of the guys there in the defense, but this team knows how to play a complete game, right? Like what have I said about like the Lions? The defense is better as a whole than the sum of its parts. That's kind of what the Cincinnati Bengals are defensively. Who did I go to first last time? I think Justin. So Rick, I'll throw it to you first. Cincy, obviously they're looking for 2024 to be a comeback campaign. What is that looking like for this team now that they would hope that Joe Burrow is back in the saddle for a full season going forward?
Well, Joe Burrow is back. That's definitely a given there. But I think the issue right now is that the Bengals are looking a little rickety on that offensive line. Their depth's taking a little bit of a hit there. Deontay Smith is out for the season because he tore a tendon in his kneecap. And then their number one draft pick, Amarius Mims, he had an injury. He had a pec injury. And they don't know if he's going to be ready for week one. And that's a problem because that's a guy that was drafted with that label of, maybe a little more injury prone. And I wonder why that was. Oh, no, he went to Georgia, not Alabama. So it's different. It's interesting. It's different, right? Look, yes. So here, my questions are offensive line depth for this Bengals team, and also can Zach Moss really fully replace what Joe Mixon provided? I mean, I know it wasn't a lot, but last year there was still hit or miss because obviously when Burrow went down, Mixon kind of had his issues, and so they went to Chase Brown. He did pretty well too for them. Yeah, look, this is a Bengals team that when everything hits for them, they're a very solid team. They're a very good roster. Everything's got to hit is the problem. They're going to benefit from the fact that they're going to have a much easier schedule because, again, when you're that last-place team, you're going to be taking on those last-place teams in those divisions that are the randoms, which includes for them the Patriots and the Chargers. I mean,
and the Panthers.
And the Panthers and the Titans. I mean, like, come on. And they're going to benefit from that. I think, this is a team that a lot of pundits are picking as a sleeper Super Bowl contender. I think sleeper is not the right word, but I do believe that there might be a little bit reaching for them. They're a very good team. I wouldn't anoint them just yet as the class of the division or as that Super Bowl caliber team, but this is a team that's going to be a dangerous out in the playoffs because they're going to get back there. They're very dangerous out, and it's going to entertain some very fun matchup potentials going forward here. But yeah, like you were saying, their roster is very talented, very loaded. They've got a lot of good pieces and a lot of good spots. I'm curious to see how their other draft pieces work for them. Chris Jenkins, the D tackle out of Michigan, can be a good. Because remember, this is a team that also lost DJ Reader, so this is a squad that's got some holes to fill, and Jenkins could be a guy that's there. They're a dangerous team. They're a dangerous team that's going to benefit from a lot of breaks that went their way, and I think that's going to help them out because I think that Joe Burrow, he might not get back to the full Burrow that he was a couple years ago because, again, injuries, they're not from heal. But even in the 10 games that he had last year, he was already eclipsing half of what he threw the year prior. So he's still got a lot of talent there. Like I said, wait and see. Hopefully that offensive line depth holds up, and if they have to go fishing for somebody, maybe they go fishing for an outcast from somewhere. But, I think at the moment they're a very good team. They're a very dangerous team. They're not my number one in this division just because I think somebody is better than them and will continue to be better than them, but it's going to make for some very exciting matches over the course of the regular season.
Yeah, and they'll have an opportunity to get their feet under them at the start of the year because aside from a Week 2 matchup in Kansas City against the Chiefs, you have two of the first 3 games are at home. Those 2 games are against the Patriots and the Commanders. And then that Week 4 game before you face the Baltimore Ravens, your first divisional game of the season, which is good for Cincy that they're waiting until Week 5 finally because the last few years it feels like they've been having division games the first month of the year.
Yeah.
But that game before Baltimore, at Carolina. So you have an opportunity against some of these teams to get that momentum, get the scheming set.
Yeah.
I think the Week 12 bye week, that's a pretty good bye week, relatively speaking.
Yep.
To have some rest going into the last month and a half or so of the season. And especially because it'll be a relatively tougher stretch on the back end. You have the Steelers right at the bye. They faced the Steelers twice in the last 6 games of the season, so that's always interesting. And then they're at Dallas for a Monday night game after their bye week as well. But I think for me, the Bengals, I wonder if this is one of those things where external factors play a role. This could be the last year for some of the guys on this roster.
Yep.
And I wonder if sense of urgency is going to play a role for this squad. And Rick, I almost disagree. I think if Joe Burrow's fully healthy this year, I think he's gunning for an MVP consideration.
He's gunning for it, absolutely. But I mean, to me, there's a lot of other extemporaneous factors that will prevent him from actually getting to that point. But
perhaps, but I think Joe Burrow is going to be a guy, and we know this because of how the voters are. There's going to be voter fatigue for the top 2 guys of Lamar and Patrick. There's an opportunity right there if he has a good enough season. So it's going to be interesting.
Tanner McKee will rise up from the ranks in Philadelphia and take over the field.
But no, I personally have a lot of faith in this Bengals team. I think they could come back and surprise us. I'm just thinking, is that internal motivation of they know this is the last year for some of these guys? Can that give them that extra gear here and there? It's the mental sometimes I think play a role. And let's be real here, the Cincinnati Bengals are a mentally tough team. This is a team that is led by, their leaders exude confidence. Joe Burrow is always calm, cool, and collected. Jamar Chase has plenty of belief in himself. He'll just say, throw him the ball and he'll make magic happen. Kind of proved that last year. And Evan McPherson for a kicker, he's pretty confident in his own right. He's going to believe he'll hit every single kick he goes up for. That's a next level type of confidence. So, I think that could be the key factor for this Bengals team going into what their season could end up like. Being able to go through adversity, I don't think it's something you can necessarily learn. I think it can kind of be ingrained. I think a lot of these guys have that ingrained in them. Justin, your 2024 Bengals takes before we move on to the next team.
I expect the Bengals to have a bounce back year. I mean, listen, you guys are right. The issue is, does Burrow stay healthy? Can he stay on the field? I like the pieces that they have. The offensive line might be good. We're going to see. But, there's been issues with that in the past. And can that secondary stay healthy also, which has been a major issue for them because they can get after the quarterback. They have the receivers. I think Zach Moss and Chase Brown can fill in for what Joe Mixon did. But it's going to matter about that offensive line, and can the major pieces stay healthy?
Yep, 100%. That's going to be a key for the Cincy team. And again, this Cincy team has been on deep playoff runs. That kind of experience. This is a team that's relatively young in certain spots, but is experienced in certain spots, and that's quite a combination to have there for yourself. All right, we move on from the Cincinnati Bengals to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Justin, I'm going to throw it directly to you for you to give us your thoughts on this Steelers team going into 2024. This is not my main question. Actually, it kind of is the main question, but I don't want this to be the only question that you address when you give your breakdown of this team. But the Steelers we know the number one thing that everyone's focusing on, it's the quarterback competition between Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. And can that gap be closed as the preseason basically finalizes itself, or like as we're approaching the start of regular season? With the roster this team has, it's a lot of good pieces on the defense, right? Patrick Queen, TJ Watt, etc. An offense that there's some questions to be answered. I think a fine enough offensive line, but a lot of people like Dan Moore Jr. as your starting left tackle is kind of a wide receiving core that what is there? Can George Pickens ascend to being a number one? Are there pieces there to support him? Can Najee Harris have a really good campaign? Do you think a potential, I don't want to say indecisiveness out of Mike Tomlin and co., but if they make the wrong quarterback selection to start the season, do you think that could cost them a chance at well, not do you think it could, obviously it could, but how badly can this season go for the Steelers if they make the wrong selection of quarterback to start this season?
I mean, I don't really think that you can make that mistake. You have two really basically unknowns. You don't know what Justin Fields can be. You don't know what Russell Wilson has left in the tank. Both selections could go incredibly wrong. And I don't necessarily know that the ceiling for both selections is all that high. I mean, I'm not saying that they'd be a bad season, but if you're saying it's 20 touchdowns or 25 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, and 12 interceptions, and 35 to 4,500 yards is the best that they're going to do, that's pretty high in my mind. But that being said, this team was also like the Jets, just a quarterback away from having any semblance of hope in the conference. So, I mean, I said the same thing when he went to Denver, but Russell Wilson's style of play should fit those receivers. They love the deep ball. George Pickens loves running down the field. I don't know if he has that kind of style of play left in the tank. It's going to be interesting. I honestly, the Steelers are much of a wild card to me. They're going to be a good team. I can't imagine Tomlin having a losing record. The Steelers should have a tight defense, but that offense is a real big question mark.
Yeah. Rick, we know on this show you're the biggest Mike Tomlin guy of them all. We're still working on getting Mike Tomlin on the show one day. Rick is working through the back channels. But the idea is that at some point things change. Is there... How do I phrase this question? If 2024 is the year where the Steeler mystique takes a hit and Tomlin and them really struggle, and it looks like by week 14 they may not get to 500, what will be the undoing of this squad going into 2024?
Arthur Smith. You've mentioned it, that the movement from Matt Canada to Arthur Smith might be one of the most lateral movements for bottom feeders that we've ever seen in this entire league. And that's really the key. I mean, here's the thing. Going into this week, I think we all had our ideas on what was going to happen, but for now it appears that the Brandon Ayuk trade is dead. So the Steelers have to kind of figure out what they've got and move on in a world without Ayuk being on their team, which means they have George Pickens, Scotty Miller, Van Jefferson, Calvin Austin. Aside from Pickens, those are guys that are, mid-tier. They're not great receivers, but they're not bad receivers. It allows them to keep the popular Pat Freiermuth, which I think would have been a big hit to this Steelers fan base if they lost him. And yeah, I mean, the defense looks great. I mean, Larry Ogunjobi can have a really solid season. Keanu Benton and Cam Hayward were very good last year as well. And that linebacking core, like I said, when you added Patrick Queen to TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith and Herbig, this is a dangerous linebacking core. But it all is a question mark on that quarterback controversy that didn't really need to happen, but is happening anyways. It feels like a Mark Madden WCW style quarterback controversy in a way, because it's a catfight's got to break out at some point potentially. So yeah, I mean, is there a way the Steelers team can be under 500? Absolutely. Is there a way they can be above 500 and still miss the playoffs? I think there's a possibility too, because I think what happened was with the Bengals coming back into the fold, that kind of elevated the Bengals and the Ravens, and then the Steelers and the Browns are probably like a little bit lesser than right now. I think the Browns and Steelers took advantage of the fact that the Bengals were at 100% last year and came to the fold. But I think now we're going to see what the division looks like with those two other teams at full strength versus what these two other teams are. And so the Steelers have a lot of good pieces. They do. They're a very good team. Will they win games? Absolutely. Will they surprise in some games? I think so. I think this is a team that has the capability to win some games that they shouldn't win and then surprise you, because that's just the way that Mike Tomlin coaches this team, But if you're looking for this to be a postseason run like it was last year, like a surprise run last year, look, I picked it last year, and I was very happy that it happened, but I was also very lucky that it happened. Let's be honest here. I don't think it's happening this year. But I don't think that they're going to be – I don't know if they're going to be that this is going to be the drop-off of sub 500 and then get rid of everybody. This could be a year where they frustratingly win more than they lose and still don't make the playoffs, but it's like, oh, but Tomlin still doesn't have a losing record in his entire coaching career, so, it's like that's never going to go away,
So 8-1 is your Steelers prediction. Got it.
It's long COVID, if you will. It's never going to go away.
Well, it's very interesting because, like you said, I think the Steelers will have a game or two against some of the top teams in the league where they do surprise us and they'll eke out the win. But this is also a team, it goes the other way, that they can lose games that they shouldn't have. And look at the schedule, especially early on in the season. 4 of the first 6 games are going to be on the road. Now, that could mean that, as you get to the back half of the season, you get some home games, right? And you get a little bit of home cooking going. But look at where some of these away games are. This Steelers team has struggled in the past under Mike Tomlin to win some West Coast games. At Denver, week 2. At Vegas in week 6. These are West Coast games, but then you get back-to-back divisional games way after the bye week at Cleveland and at Cincy after a Baltimore home. There are some schedule gaffes for the Steelers here where there's very much a possibility where, like you said, they could surprise us. They could very much beat the Ravens in that week 11 game. You know what they could also do? They could lose to the Broncos in that week 2 game. It could go either way with this team.
Not to mention they also have one of 2 Christmas Day games this year on Netflix.
Yep. And that will be at home against the Kansas City Chiefs, a 1 p.m. start, Eastern Standard.
Lovely.
And like you said, on Netflix. You have a Netflix subscription, Rick?
No. Don't.
There we go. So with that being said, the Pittsburgh, I just realized this just said Pittsburgh Penguins the entire time. Look at that.
Oh,
that's
boy.
amazing. I mean,
boy.
I'd rather watch a Penguins game than a Steelers game sometimes this season.
Ooh.
Anyways,
Okay.
I mean, we're a hockey guy.
Yeah, sure.
Cleveland Browns in the AFC North. This team finished second in this division last year, believe it or not.
Yeah.
And they did it without a quarterback. So maybe the quarterback is overrated. You don't need a quarterback at all, No, in all seriousness, the Cleveland Browns, they finished second in the AFC North last year. Like you said, Rick, probably in part with taking advantage of the fact that the Bengals were having a down year. To me, they're bringing back a lot of pieces, right? They actually just recently extended Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. So they have JOK. You still have Myles Garrett there. There's a Zadarius Smith next to him. That could be something. Dalvin Tomlinson is next to him. You still have Denzel Ward and Grant Delpit and Greg Newsome in the secondary. And Devin Bush, former Steeler, in the linebacking core along with JOK. Like, the defense to me is extremely talented. I think this defense is going to be, once again, a top 10, top 9 defense in the league. I don't have questions about that. Will the offense cost this team games? Is Nick Chubb, unfortunately, and I say this unfortunately because I do love Nick Chubb, will the Nick Chubb injury sap away some of that game-changing ability that he has shown for the squad in the past? And what Deshaun Watson are we going to see? To me, those are, I hate to boil it down, but I think those are the 2 biggest question marks with this team. What Deshaun Watson are we going to see if there is still some of that old elite Deshaun Watson in there? And can Nick Chubb bring back that explosiveness? Not necessarily in terms of, like, he's not the same athletic freak that he was before his injury necessarily. I mean, maybe he still is, I don't know. But, what is the propensity that he'll rip off 25-yard runs out of nothing? What are the odds that they give him a handoff, the Browns' offensive line didn't do the best job, and what was going to look like a 2-yard loss is going to be a 12, 13-yard gain, which he has done throughout his career in certain moments? Will that impact the support Deshaun Watson has, and will trying to rely on him being the guy once again sink this team? Was last year just a Cinderella run for the Cleveland Browns that ended up in no playoff wins because they got slaughtered in the wild card game? Rick, I'll throw that to you first.
It was still a Cinderella run that we were all entertained by. I mean, Joe Flacco kind of, made everything work there. And so how did they replace Joe Flacco as the backup quarterbacks? Jameis Winston and Tyler Huntley. Great. Yeah, if Watson gets hurt again, that's really what I'm worried about is Winston.
And DTR is the fourth string.
I know DTR is still there too. Look, Jerome Ford was very good last year at spelling Nick Chubb. He got 930 plus yards on the ground. He was very good. He basically did everything you could have asked for him in replacing Chubb. And this Browns team got better wide receiver core if you believe that Jerry Jeudy needed the change of scenery, because it's Cooper and Jeudy. Elijah Moore's still there, and they drafted Jamari Thrash. So you pair that with David Njoku, and it's solid enough offensive unit. Defense is scary for this Browns team, man. They're a very, very talented defense. This defense, I think, will win some games for this Browns team because of just how annoying they will be to offenses that are going in. I think that you have, you said JOK, phenomenal. This secondary is very, very good with Grant Delpit still there, and Newsome and Juan Thornhill as well. But I think to your point, the clock strikes midnight. Every fairy tale, the clock strikes midnight. And I think, is Deshaun Watson a talented quarterback? Yes, he's got that potential, but you're right. Is Nick Chubb back to full form? We'll see. Are teams now more able to scheme against Kevin Stefanski's offense? Probably. Again, this is a team that I think can start off really well, but come towards the end, you have all these guys who are playing maybe full seasons off of injury-riddled years. And will that start to re-up themselves? I think the Browns got very fortunate last year. I don't see it as sustained success for them. I don't. And I think that this is a year that will probably be like what last year should have been for them. I think that they'll kind of be rougher around the edges than you would anticipate. And I do believe that this is a team that is a candidate for some troubles, because there's a lot of personalities on this team. There's a lot of egos and a lot of people who ain't going to be happy with this squad. And so, we'll see how it fares, but I don't think it's going to go very well for them.
The fans could be included in that category of won't be happy with this team.
Throwing beer bottles.
To say the very least.
Yep.
Justin, long since are we past the days of the Cleveland Browns having to lock all the alcohol in the city, waiting for the team to win? They can actually win some games now. But how many games and how will they win these games is really the question. What stands out to you the most, Justin, when it comes to 2024? Whether it be to lead this team to success and prove that last year wasn't just a one-off, or could be a detriment to what they're hoping is a good campaign? Because despite what Kevin Stefanski has done with a couple playoff appearances, they've never done it. I don't think they've done it back-to-back years yet under him. It's been like one good, one bad, one good, one bad. They need to establish something. Justin, what can they do to finally establish that here in 2024?
Well, they need to establish some quarterback play. That's why they brought Stefanski in there, right? That's why they traded all those picks for Deshaun Watson. The defense is fine. Injuries, happen, but if that team is healthy, the defense is fine. If they can get that run game going, if they can keep Nick Chubb healthy, that offense is fine. The offensive line is fine. It's the quarterback that's the issue. They brought Stefanski in because he was a quarterback guy. They brought Deshaun Watson in because of the years that he had. And, they won in spite of having 5 quarterbacks play last year, but that was the issue. They had no quarterback play, even when Watson was on the field. They've brought in some new receivers now. They're going to have some more depth. Everything is there. The stage is set. And that's a theme, I think, in a lot of the teams we discussed today is either they have the quarterback or they have everything else. The only team that I think didn't fit that mold is maybe the Patriots. But the Bills have the quarterback. They don't really seem to have anything else. The Cleveland has everything else. They don't seem to have a quarterback. And can they get anything out of this dude? he's shown more life during a massage, it seems, than he has on the football field. So we need some sort of play out of him, and make it show us why you were worth all of this money and all of these draft picks. I haven't seen anything yet.
He's not worth all the money, anyways. I mean, let's be honest.
Justin's been unhinged this episode.
I know this is
three coins in the swear jar.
We gotta make it a point to do this week by week, because if we leave Justin doing all devices for a couple weeks, he just goes off on Jerry Springer-esque tangents and rants. You think that my rants are bad? Jeez.
But no, Justin's point is there. Like, offense is what's going to lead this team to either a successful season or almost like if Kevin Stefanski can't figure it out with Deshaun Watson this year. Like, I know he's the 2-time coach of the year, which he realistically shouldn't have won last year's coach of the year. It should have been MCDC's. Yeah. Like, does it not start to question like his job? Because if you can't bring Deshaun Watson back, what are we doing here?
Yeah,
we hire you to do this job. You can't do this job. Let's recheck that qualifications list. So yeah. I don't know. It's a very interesting season for Cleveland to an extent. I mean, I don't think it'll be a Buffalo-esque, or maybe it will be a Buffalo-esque collapse. I'm not sure. We'll see. All right, last team to discuss, ladies and gentlemen. The Baltimore Ravens, the team that won this division last year, the team that was the top seed in the AFC last year, home to the reigning, defending, not tribal chief, but MVP of the NFL, last year's MVP, Lamar Jackson. This team made some additions. They lost some guys, but they made some additions this past offseason. Lamar Jackson, once again, the MVP. John Harbaugh leading the ship. Derrick Henry joining that backfield. He is RB1. Zay Flowers entering year 2 for him. Should be very interesting. Rashad Bateman. See what he can put together in year 3 or 4? I forget off the top of my head. For him. Nelson Aguilar's there. Do with that information what you will. Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely as a great tight end duo. Ronnie Stanley, Tyler Linderbaum, as the top 2 guys on that offensive line. Now, stalwarts. Defense, they did lose Patrick Queen, which was tough, but you still have talented guys there in Roquan Smith, Michael Pierce along that defensive line as a veteran. They have David Ajabo, who they're hoping could take a big leap this year, right? Owe, another guy. That linebacking core, they may have lost the talent of Patrick Queen, but they have the veteran savviness of a Kyle Van Noy. That dude's been on some winning teams. He's been on some solid teams. Kyle Hamilton, Marcus Williams, Marlon Humphrey. Like, there's just talent across the team. They added Eddie Jackson for depth. You know how good you are when Eddie Jackson is one of your depth safeties at this point? Pretty good. Baltimore, Justin, throwing it to you first. This team had so many things go their way last year. The health of Lamar Jackson, receivers finally not dropping the ball when it was thrown to them. Seemed that John Harbaugh maybe fixed some of the issues he had with late games play call situations, but they still fell to the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC Championship. And death taxes, and it repeats. People just make mistakes against Kansas City in the AFC title game. We know what Baltimore wants. They want to make it back to the AFC title game. They want to win the AFC title game, and they want to win the Super Bowl. They are one of the top teams that we will point to as their goal is to stop Kansas City from three-peating this year. My leading question for your analysis, Justin, yes or no, can Baltimore materialize that championship DNA on this squad this season? Can this be that kind of year for the Ravens?
Yeah, I think it can be. I think if they had the pieces last year also. The question is, can they actually get over the hump? Can they beat the Chiefs is really the question, because it seems to be something that most people have not been able to do. Only one team we've seen beat, well, I guess 2, is the Patriots with Tom Brady and the Bengals. And since then, we haven't really seen anyone else beat them. So who are they going to rely on to get over that hump? There's some new faces there. We have Derrick Henry there running the ball now, where the secondary is going to be healthy again. They should have that nasty run defense that they always have under Harbaugh. But can they keep their running backs on the field? One, because that was a major issue last year. And can they have a really good game and beat the team? Because that's what it comes down to, is can they have their best game when they need their best game? That's something that the Ravens have lacked over the last couple of years. And I don't necessarily think it's a Lamar issue. It's a team game. It's a team issue. So will they react when they need to react? That's the question mark in my mind.
Yeah, and it might just be that. Like, Rick, I'm kind of on Justin's side. Like, this team has the talent. They have the pieces. They have the quarterback. We believe now that they got the running back there, right? And finally, it'll be the perfect balance, we believe in it. And there's the well, I don't want to say delusions in a bad way, but the visions of grandeur, I'll say, of Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, rushing attack, right? Zay Flowers, he could definitely take his game to another level. That kid has only scratched the surface of how good he is. Offensive line is strong. The defense is strong. The defense has talent. They sometimes get unlucky with the injuries, but for the most part, they're so deep to the point where it's like they could deal with it here and there. It's just the little things, realistically, with this team, right? And it was the little things that lost them the game last year against the Chiefs, if we're being honest.
Yep.
So can they, again, I mentioned it before, can it be something that you could teach? Is it something you naturally have? Can they finally get over the little margins, Rick? Do it right in the small things to finally overcome the Kansas City Chiefs mountain in the AFC?
Well, we'll find out in week 1, won't we? Since the Ravens and Chiefs play on Thursday night in week 1 to open the year, right? My other concern with the Ravens has been the concern with the Ravens for years and years past, and that's injuries. Because whenever the Ravens seem to have a very strong season lined up, like in their crosshairs, ready to go, the next week 4 or 5 guys get hurt, and depth for me is a question in certain spots for them. Keaton Mitchell is on the PUP list for the running backs. Remember, they got rid of both J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. So it's Derrick Henry and Justice Hill and insert question mark here because it's not Mitchell. There's no Devin Duvernay on this team anymore. So Nelson Aguilar is supposed to be your other guy, which is, fine. You have Flowers and Bateman, but then, my biggest thing, too, is that as much as I gave Tyler Huntley a lot of flack for being a Pro Bowl quarterback, who's backing up Lamar right now? 38-year-old Josh Johnson on his 95th team because they have two rookies on their string. They have Malik Cunningham on the roster, too, who played QB in Louisville, but he's a wide receiver primarily. So, much like the Eagles discussion, if injuries befell the Ravens and they have in years past, where do they go? Like, this is a team that's relying on that, as you said perfectly, George, delusions of grandeur of a Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson, 2-pronged rushing attack of doom. But what if something happens to this team? It's a big question mark. Justin Matabuke was phenomenal for them last year on the defensive line. And I think that they found a really strong weapon to, plug up the run. Travis Jones can be better, but he's solid enough. Their linebacking core. Roquan Smith is what Hassan Reddick dreams that he was, because he was good enough to get a $100 million contract extension. That's what he wants, and that's what he's not getting. So nice try there. Look, does this team have enough on paper to compete? Absolutely. What's the one thing that's going to put him over the edge? I guess it's just staying healthy, because, again, year in and year out, it's a question mark of, well, why isn't this team better? Because they're not healthy enough. They were the number 1 seed last year. They showed no rust coming off of that long bye leading to the divisional game against the Texans. And then when Bush came up against the Chiefs, they weren't a playoff caliber team against the Chiefs. It was just different. And so I think this, right now we're in a good spot where the Ravens have, as you said, they've all that talent and all that wherewithal, but you really want to make an impact, punch Kansas City in the mouth in week 1. I mean, look at what they did for Detroit last year. Detroit was taken seriously, and they proved that they won their division. They were a couple plays away from being in the Super Bowl again against the Chiefs. Maybe that's the key to the whole thing. If you want to be considered a valuable team or a dangerous threat, be Kansas City in week 1. Or to go into their division. If you want to be considered a legitimate head coach, Antonio Pierce, he beat Kansas City. That's what he did, and look at what he is now. So, maybe that's the kryptonite to this whole thing. If they go out in week 1 and they knock Kansas City on their backs, they're a dangerous team. If they don't, it's status quo. They're the same old Ravens. They're going to be a good team. They're going to be a playoff team, probably win the division, but they're not going to be in the upper echelon with Kansas City. Basically it'll be the Chiefs and everybody else. Basically how it is.
Yeah, and it's that mental game against Kansas City that you need to do. Because remember, we started to see some cracks in Kansas City in the regular season. They weren't the same team they were now. Of course, again, they put it together in the postseason. It's basically two different sports. But we saw that Kansas City can be had. We saw that you can get to them mentally. We saw them get frustrated. We saw them get frustrated in the Super Bowl in instances. You can get to this team. You can beat this team. Kansas City is beatable. They're not 17-0.
Right.
But it's almost like you let yourself get beaten by them. And that to me is the ultimate test. The Ravens to me are in that echelon of team where the talent can't be questioned. It's the other aspects. It's the discipline. It's the mental fortitude against this team. It's going mano a mano against Kansas City in ways aside from talent. And that's a good thing to be in that echelon. But now you're taking on the team that looks to be the best at doing that for a while now, eh? So, like you said, Rick, maybe it's that week 1 where if Kansas City beats you, it has to be only by a game-winning field goal. You can take losing to Kansas City if Harrison Butker decides it, because you can then tell yourself, we could have won that game.
Mm-hmm.
Could have won that game.
Yeah.
And maybe that is what you need going into the season. I think it's going to be interesting. This division is not going to be easy to say the very least, because as we talked about, there are some really talented teams here. But the first step to be able to have a chance at beating KC is winning not just your division, challenging for the top of the AFC, challenging for that number 1 seed. And the Ravens are definitely going to be gun-ho on that once again. So we'll see. All right, boys, I think that wraps up the AFC North part of this. 3 out of 4 divisions down in the AFC, 7 out of 8 in the NFL, 1 to go. Now let's give our predictions before we end the show. Rick, throw it to you first. Who is your 4th seed in the AFC North for 2024?
This is going to be another competitive division once again. And I have this team going 8-9. It's the Browns. Like I said, I think the quarterback question is a little too much to overcome for them. But they're a very solid team. They're the best of the worst teams that we have in the 4th place teams. They have the best record of all of them because that's how good this division is. That's how good they are on defense, but their offense is a big question mark for them. So 8-9 for them for me.
Our 4th seed in the AFC North for all 4 of us could be the 2nd seed in some of the divisions we've talked about.
Oh, yeah.
So
absolutely.
That's how good it is. Justin, your 4th seed in the AFC North.
Cleveland.
Same. It's very close for me, honestly. But I just give it to Cleveland because there's too many Deshaun Watson questions. If Deshaun Watson was not the enigma of his talent and playability that he is, the Browns would be way higher, to say the very least.
Yeah.
But Browns are number 4 for me. I'll go next. My number 3 is the Pittsburgh Steelers. I just think the quarterback question and to me, the lack of confidence in your wide receiving core as a whole. Van Jefferson might have to step up to be the number 2, which is a role that he hasn't done before. George Pickens needs to be the number 1 now. That's going to be a big thing of can he hold up on that end of the bargain? Will we see frustration come out of him like we've seen in previous receivers of the Steelers past? Hey, Juju's available again. Pittsburgh, you can go after him. There's a lot of questions that I think it's going to cost this team early enough and keep them out of that upper echelon tier in the league again. So the Steelers are my 3rd seed in the AFC North. Rick, throw it to you. You're number 3.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that the Steelers just are not. They're gonna finish 9-8, so it's gonna continue that conversation of Tomlin doesn't have a losing record, and they're gonna be that first team out because they're gonna miss the playoffs by a game. But I agree. At some point, when push comes to shove, this will be a team that, the quarterback controversy is just too much for them. They're another team, talented on defense, a lot of offensive weapons. Quarterback's the big question, and it's going to hurt them in the end. So, I think the Steelers miss the playoffs. Maybe you start seeing some question marks about Tomlin really come to fruition. But again, he hangs his hat on the fact that I haven't lost the season. So,
yeah. Justin, you're number 3, and then you can carry on with giving us your number 1 and then, of course, subsequent number 2.
Sure. My number 3 is going to be Pittsburgh. I think that defense is nasty. I think they're going to have a good year, but I don't know that offense is going to be able to keep pace with them. And then my number 2 is not going to be a surprise. It's going to be the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm sticking on that Ravens train again, the same way I usually stick with the Eagles, not this year. But they're the best team. I think they have the best quarterback. They have the best quarterback play currently. Until Joe Burrow gets healthy again, we'll see. But, I think Joe Burrow has the ability to be the best quarterback, but he has not been the last year. Mm-hmm. So the reigning MVP is a guy that wins his division, and I expect him to win his division this year.
Yep. Similar for me, Ravens 1, Bengals 2, but I think it's extremely close once again. And Joe Burrow, it's funny because Bengals Ravens, we're gonna have both those matchups done by week, I think 10 was what I saw.
Yeah.
So we're gonna see relatively early what those scores are, and that'll probably play a key role in who's gonna win this division. And again, an MVP conversation depending on where the story of the season goes ultimately. But I just have it by a game or two at most, Ravens over the Bengals, but it's extremely close.
Yeah, similar for me. I have the Ravens winning 13 games, 13-4. So there's that 3-way tie I talked about in the AFC South. Ravens, Jets, Texans, 13-4, all of them. Bengals 12-5. They're a good team. They'll be the top wild card team. But like Justin's saying, until proven otherwise, when if Burrow's fully healthy, you could see this flip flop. But until proven otherwise, the Ravens are the class of its division. So I think they take that one pretty easily.
All right, a consistent 4-1. I'm almost willing to swap mine if need be, so we could have something different. But it's a Browns 4, a Steelers 3, a Bengals 2, and a Ravens 1 for all three of us. So another hat trick.
And notice I did not, like last year, I did not say something bad about Justin Tucker. So, there you go.
There we go.
Did not ruin that for anybody.
So that completes that. 7 of 8 divisions fully predicted. 1 more to go. The home of the, once again, defending Super Bowl champions. And then we move on to our full playoff predictions. That should be fun to say the very least. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on this week's Divisional Breakdown. And for one last segment, first time in August, hopefully not the last, we got Rant and Rick's Roastrum Podium to end the show. Podfather, take us home.
Let's talk about something, gentlemen. This is my number 3 point that I want to bring up. Breaking in the Olympics, the breakdancing competition that everyone's talking about on social media, about Ray Gunn, the Australian female breakdancer, and maybe how she might have gotten onto the Olympic stage, how she might not have gotten, who knows. Look, I'm not going to try and glorify any of her moves. The kangaroo kick was kind of a little questionable at best, but here's what I'll say. She wasn't great. Still a lot better than anybody who's trolling her online could probably break dance or anything like that. So this is kind of one of those things where it's like the sum of the parts and the equivalency protocol. If you can't do the thing that she was trying to do, then don't talk about it. Just don't. Yeah, okay, whatever. Was it weird? Fine. Breakdancing in the Olympics, I don't think was a thing that should have been there anyways, but that's neither here nor there. What does it even matter? Why are we bothering with this? Just let her do her thing, man. She had fun. She danced. She enjoyed herself. She represented her country. So be it. Whatever. She wasn't great, but she's better than all of you out there, and me myself included. I can't break dance worth a damn. So there you go. Number 2 for me. Disney. How in the world is Miley Cyrus a gosh darn Disney legend when she left Disney well after Hannah Montana and eschewed the values of what Disney is? If I think about Disney legends, I look at Julie Andrews, Mary Poppins, of course, the 9 Old Men of cartooning, and you're going to tell me that Miley Cyrus is in there as well? Now, the rest of the Disney legends that are there too, here's the funny part about it. Because Disney owns so many damn things now, it's oh, guess who's the Disney legend? Because we own Star Wars. Harrison Ford. Harrison Ford made his run in Star Wars long before Disney bought Lucasfilm. So put that with an asterisk. Disney legend from a company we bought 25 years ago, but still, That's like you're gonna put that in line with Pat Carroll, who was Ursula in The Little Mermaid. Like that's and the whole idea of legends is just a word we use too often nowadays. So I think we need to really rethink that for our minds here. Now, number one, this is more of a annoyance for me that I've come into contact with in my current life. Sinks. Yeah. Here's the added point to this one. The sinks that are conserving water, like the ones that you push down on the faucet hob and the water comes down, and the minute that you have your hands full of soap, you try and go there and the water goes away. So now you gotta put your hand back on the dirty, like, cold water dispenser that you have soap all over to get your water, and it still goes away. And then, like, there's like different, like, you can turn the one, you try and go, and the water goes away. And then you can put your hand in there, the water goes in, the water goes away. It's like, I understand you wanted this to be about water conservation, but how about you just tell society to stop being stupid with sinks and running water? Like, turn the water on, soap, put your hands in the water, turn the water off. Don't make it a game of cat and mouse where I have to do, all of that stuff. This is what I'm going to say. And this is a very Southern thing that I just found out the other day, but it's the greatest Southern thing that I've ever heard. The sinks that have those, like, flash knobs are more useless than the number 9 in the microwave. Like, give me a regular sink with, like, the regular faucets that turn on and turn off and call it a day. I know how to conserve water. The rest of the world, conserve water, damn it, and do the right thing. Stop making these stupid contraptions that don't make any sense. They don't. Like, it's like if I gotta put soap on my hand and then touch it with the back of my hand, we failed as a society. I mean, we have anyways, because Adam ranks a moron. But, neither here nor there. And Lincoln Riley's a bum. We failed as a society. But that's it. Like, do better, world. Do better, Moen, and whoever you are, Kohler, the faucets. Do better.
I actually agree with the Podfather here. I agree with the sinks part. Like, there's some annoying things. They say it's to conserve water. No, it's not. They're just trying to save on their water bills.
They're trying to be jerks. You know who designed all those sinks that Justin will come in contact with? Hassan Reddick, because it's just funny.
And with that being said, as Hassan Reddick looks to move on from his career of pass rusher to sink manufacturer, that concludes this edition of the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast. Double divisional breakdown in this one. One more to go. Plenty more fun, football, and chaos to be had in future episodes. Joining us here, ladies and gentlemen, on a weekly basis. Well, relatively weekly. Once we get to the NFL season, we'll be back to weekly again later. So, that being said, thank you so much for joining us on another edition of the show. We'll be back next week as we complete our tour around the NFL through all the divisions. And then we'll give you the AFC West next time. And then after that, our full playoff picture. And then the season, glorious as it may be, will be back upon us. Take care, everybody. We'll see you guys next time.